My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there.
I have seen the logs. I have seen the videos. We have attempted shoot downs of UAPs on a regular basis. We're talking as recently as last Friday.
My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there.
I have seen the logs. I have seen the videos. We have attempted shoot downs of UAPs on a regular basis. We're talking as recently as last Friday.
My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there.
I have seen the logs. I have seen the videos. We have attempted shoot downs of UAPs on a regular basis. We're talking as recently as last Friday.
Yes.
Alien scientist Jeremy Corbell on CNN a week before the balloon up. Just a coincidence?
Well, Corbell is like, he's like the clown. He's like the circus clown. And he needs to kind of come out and do the clown bit. What happens with somebody like that is, they go on Fox News, they go on CNN, and they say UFO expert. Okay, so first of all, how do you even become a UFO expert? This guy made a film about Bob Lazar, and before that, he was a condo guy. He ran a condo. So he's not a UFO expert. He's probably somebody who is a UFO enthusiast. And so he got on this thing with George Knapp. And George Knapp, it's tough to look at his career because he brought forward things in the 90s and in the 2000s. And then he got involved with Bigelow and TTSA and Elizondo and DeLong. And, it's all CIA wash. So I don't know. I don't even know how to comment on somebody like Knapp. But now that he's wrapped up with Corbell, forget it. And they're there at CNN's, saying, CNN wants to get to the bottom of this, and that damn government better give us the truth, when all the people around them feeding them this false information are all government people. Elizondo's government, Gary Nolan is CIA, over a decade of CIA. I mean, come on, these are government people. So that damn government, this whole thing, Elizondo is an ex-Pentagon fighter, he never left the Pentagon. He's not ex-anything. So it's a joke. That was a narrative. And so we have some people in the media, let's say there are good people in the media. Let's say even Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson were trying to do something, and they're like, we're covering UFOs and stuff. And they bring in all these CIA people to talk about the subject. That's the problem that I have with it. They do not have the background and the information on it. So someone like CNN working with Corbell, they can create a whole phony setup, basically, of CNN wants to get to the bottom of the UFO thing and really milk it. And this guy, is dropping F-bombs every 2 seconds about it. It's to downgrade the whole thing. That is the exact opposite of disclosure. It has nothing to do with disclosure at all. It's a circus marketing freak show. Thank you, alien scientist, for that question.
I love licking Bob Lazar's butthole. It's my favorite butthole to lick.
So on this podcast, it's fair to say we're going to talk a lot about UFOs.
Full-time into UFOs.
Over 100 UFOs. The
UFO world came to my door.
There's UFO sightings and more.
Okay.
This
is really interesting.
What is your best piece of evidence that UFOs are real? Show it to me. Show it to me. Put it in my hands.
The sexual things that aliens had done.
Fuck this.
Yeah. This field is a mess. This topic is an absolute disaster.
all this shit about UFOs.
UFOs may not be extraterrestrial.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Corbell. I'm really into this, but I'm not a crazy person. I really want to know the truth. I've got a few things that I've been doing.
The hell was that?
UFOs.
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 UFOs every day.
And in Jeremy Corbell's documentary about Bob Lazar, there is an allusion that Bob still has an element 115. Does he really have an element 115?
Well, I can tell you that he did have it because I saw it. You know, I was at his house.
Wow.
You know, he had it it was a pewter sort of a device that he had created to sort of protect it from unwanted rays and things and particles. And it was in his house. He took it out one time, and they did an experiment called a cloud chamber experiment, in which they could show that this element 115 affected gravity. It bent light, in essence. He thought it was real. His friends thought it was real. The government seems to have thought it was real because they came looking for it a bunch of times. They came looking a bunch of times. And, you know, if I believe that Bob has put that away somewhere in a place where nobody's going to find it unless he wants to break it out. I've tried to convince him that he should, but I think he probably sees that as his insurance policy that keeps him alive, because there have been threats both against him and against me and likely against Jeremy Corbell.
Folks are doing, and anti-gravity propulsion is something they want very badly. Bob said that the key to it was this element 115. He had a piece of it. I saw it. In fact, he had a little experiment they did with what's called a cloud chamber, where they had, it looked to me like light. They had a piece of this 115 in this chamber. They put some smoke in it, and it seemed, and then had a beam of light through it, and the light bent. Bob, at one point, when he thought he was going to die, had this piece of 115 in it was in a lead casing, in a disc-shaped casing, and he had it in front of a particle accelerator at his house, and he had the accelerator on, and all he had to do was flip a button. If this stuff was real, as he described it, flipping that button would hit it with, I don't know, it's protons or electrons, whatever it was, that would make it explode, an annihilation that would have left a great big hole in Las Vegas. And he had that piece. I saw the experiment. What happened to it, that's a story for another time. It's in a spot now where nobody could get to it, but it's still there. One of these days, maybe after Bob's gone, I'll go dig it up. The Defense Department folks are doing, and anti-gravity propulsion is something they want.
She saw this standing on two legs, a wolf creature, a wolf standing in her yard, its paws crossed like this, leaning on a tree, staring back at her.
They come down this dirt road one night, and they see two figures, humanoid-looking figures, standing up with their backs to the road, and looked like they were smoking cigarettes. They had trench coats on, smoking cigarettes, standing out on the road. These guys figure, what are these fellas up to? So they're pulling up, and they go shining their lights on the guys, and they turn around, and they were dogs.
But no evidence of any kind to back up any of these stories has ever been presented. George Knapp, who's built an entire career around stories of UFOs and the paranormal, and who was one of the authors of the Hunt for the Skinwalker book, was asked about evidence on the Joe Rogan show.
Because they weren't there with cameras. Is there any evidence? Like for the first 20 months when the rancher is there, they don't have any evidence because he's not a paranormal investigator.
At this point, Knapp begins telling more stories about UFOs on and near the ranch. Rogan then interrupts and asks again.
Is there any evidence? No, not really.
Oh.
If you're looking for physical evidence and solid proof, and they don't have it.
Oh. Knapp saying there's no proof or evidence is quite strange, considering the book Knapp co-authored says this. we obtained an intriguing body of physical evidence to support many of the accounts described in the book. Okay, so where is that intriguing body of physical evidence?
Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, 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 it's garbage science. Nonsense, nonsense, nonsense.
Spheres,
We have no evidence.
pyramids,
We have no evidence.
cubes,
We have no evidence.
and cigars.
We have no evidence.
Spheres,
We have no evidence.
pyramids,
We have no evidence.
cubes,
We have no evidence.
and cigars.
We have no evidence.
Spheres,
We have no evidence.
pyramids,
We have no evidence.
cubes,
We have no evidence.
and cigars.
We have no evidence.
Spheres,
We have no evidence.
pyramids,
We have no evidence.
cubes,
We have no evidence.
and cigars.
We have no evidence. 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 No evidence. We have no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, 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 evidence.
Truer words by one George Knapp have never been spoken before. We have no evidence. Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back. Tonight, we are going to be retreading what I thought is old territory for us, and that is the Bob Lazar story, because UFO profiteering whores George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell are back with new nonsense stories to sell us. No truth to tell us, plenty of stories to sell us, however. Two of the most profitable UFO profiteering whores in the history of UFO profiteering whores have been George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, who have both apparently made millions of dollars selling stories such as Skinwalker Ranch and Bob Lazar's story. Tonight, we'll be focusing on Bob Lazar's story due to some excellent recent reporting and revelations that cast further doubts on the story. And we will get into that. But we are continuing my sort of reminder to myself tonight that some people tuning in are not maybe up to speed on the different stories that we cover. So we do like to give a quick overview. Now, insofar as Bob Lazar, I can say that I have been covering this story since it broke in 1989, I believe. I saw some national news reports. I collected newspaper clippings. Yes, this is 1989, pre-internet. Later in the early to mid 90s, there was Bob Lazar information everywhere in alternative circles. And at the time, one of those big alternative circles was bulletin board systems, the early text pre-internet, and something called FidoNet, in which there were message boards talking about things like UFOs and Bob Lazar, and I would download text files of interviews Bob Lazar had given, and I would anxiously await Bob Lazar's appearances on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, anxious to hear more of the story. Years later, I would come to understand more about how the profit-driven motives of UFO stories works, and how so many people within that genre who are selling stories are 100% fake, whether their educations are fake, their claimed military backgrounds are fake. The UFO community is filled with fake soldiers, fake super soldiers, fake Navy SEALs, fake doctors, and fake scientists. And Bob Lazar is no different. But to give you just a quick overview, Bob Lazar is a name that has become synonymous with conspiracy theories about aliens, flying saucers, specifically back engineering captured or recovered alien flying saucers, and the infamous Area 51 military base in Nevada. Lazar claims to have worked on extraterrestrial spacecraft and technology at a secret government facility he called S4. And his story has gained a significant following among those who believe in the existence of extraterrestrial life, flying saucers, alien visitation, and more. However, a skeptical perspective on Lazar's claims reveals an incredible a mountain of inconsistencies, lies, and a profit-driven motive behind his story, and those who also, like him, profited from bringing it to us. While it's certainly possible that Lazar truly believes in his own story, the evidence suggests that his claims are not based on reality and are, in fact, fictitious. One of the most significant red flags in Lazar's story has been his education and employment history. Lazar claims to have received degrees from prestigious universities, such as Caltech and MIT. But there is no evidence to support these claims, and however, there is ample and supportive evidence to prove that his claims are entirely false. Now, you may, if you look into the Bob Lazar story, come across the mental gymnastics and excuses that the believer crowd will give. Oh, the men in black erased his education because he blew the whistle. No, that's entirely fictitious, because real researchers like Michael Schratt actually got a hold of all of those yearbooks. Not a single mention of Bob Lazar in any of the yearbooks. Further, he claims to have gotten a degree from Caltech that at the time he claimed he got that degree did not exist. They did not have a master's program in I believe it was electronics technology, like he claimed to have gotten from Caltech. So the Men in Black explanation falls apart very quickly. It's important to note that one researcher, Stanton Friedman, did an incredible. He was the first person to uncover that Bob Lazar's entire educational history and claims of being a scientist were entirely fictitious and false. Interestingly, some of the UFO profiteering whores that I mentioned, like Jeremy Corbell, attacked a very aging old Stanton Friedman. I believe he was in his 80s at the time, and Jeremy Corbell was about to release his so-called documentary film, which was a joke, attacked Stanton Friedman viciously for Stanton Friedman being skeptical of the story. But it's very important to note that Stanton Friedman was a real and verifiable nuclear physicist. He tried to meet with Bob Lazar several times, and having had conversations with Mr. Friedman previous to his passing, I know that Mr. Friedman's plan of action was going to be to interview him and find out if he really was a physicist or knew anything about physics. And he did some of that on the telephone. As soon as he started getting into physics with one Bob Lazar on the telephone, Bob Lazar canceled the meetings and refused to meet with Stanton Friedman, who was a real nuclear physicist, and at the time perhaps the most well-respected UFO researcher of his day. Interesting that a fake convicted pimp, fake scientist would refuse to meet with a real scientist who started asking him science questions. That alone weighed heavily on my mind and my determination to get to the bottom of the story. I just wanted to know whether it was true or not. And for years now, myself and many other great researchers have been poking holes in the Bob Lazar boat. And it would appear that there's so many holes in that Bob Lazar boat right now that it's sinking. And isn't it interesting that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, the two UFO profiteering whores I mentioned, who have made more money than anyone on that story, probably more than Bob Lazar himself, they refuse to address any of the evidence that I will be sharing with you this evening. Absolutely, positively refuse to address any of the evidence that I will be sharing with you. And it's interesting. It's so interesting that the two guys who made the most money, right? You've got millions of dollars from selling this story. Whose job is it to defend the story or talk about all the holes being poked in the Bob Lazar mythos? And that's what this is. This was a myth generated by a fake convicted pimp scientist. I'm going to say that again. This man who claimed to be a prestigious scientist, a senior staff level physicist, was never a scientist, period, full stop. He is, however, a convicted pimp. He is also a proven polygamist. He married a second wife while still married to a first wife. And there's whole problems with that story as well. But another area of Lazar's story that raises skepticism is his description of the so-called science or technology he allegedly worked on. Lazar claims to have worked on 9 flying saucers. Well, he claimed that he had seen 9, but only touched or worked on 1 flying saucers of extraterrestrial origin. Yet his descriptions of their technology do not match up with what we know about real physics and engineering. Have a real physicist look at the so-called science of how Bob explains these craft work. They will tell you that this is akin to Star Trek gobbledygook, fake science fiction. Bob Lazar's description of how these so-called alien spacecraft fly, operate, and generate power are about as good as the fictional Star Trek manuals that you can get on how warp drive works. It's a work of fiction. For example, he claims that the flying saucers were powered by an element 115, which has magical properties that defy the laws of physics. However, most of his claims about element 115 were proven to be completely and totally false when element 115 was actually created or discovered in a lab. And it was called moscovium. It had 0 of the properties. Now, I know the true believer crowd, well, there's different isotopes. Great. Well, they've had 10 years now to come up with the magic element 115 that worked as Bob Lazar described, and they never have. And you know what? They never will, because this is science fiction garbage. This is not reality. Furthermore, Lazar has been caught in many lies over the years. For example, he claimed to have worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory as a senior staff level physicist. But there is no record of his employment as a physicist there. However, there is record of his employment as a subcontractor for Kirk Meyer. Further, researchers, Signals Intelligence has done an amazing job locating Bob Lazar's supervisors at that laboratory. Did he work there? Yes. But guess what? He was never a physicist or a scientist at that laboratory. He was a low-level technician, the kind of a guy who would get a real scientist like a new mouse if the mouse on the computer stopped working, run some LAN cables for him, right? Or get him a new computer, attach his computers to the other lab's servers. He was a low-level electronics technician at Los Alamos. He was not a scientist. And interviews with his supervisors on the record interviewers. Unlike Jeremy Corbell and Bob Lazar, who have lots of anonymous sources who they say backed up Bob's story, we here in the world of reality, not the land of science fiction, make-believe for profit that you pretend is a true story, we here have on the record named sources. And the hallmark of the truth, or especially a good researcher bringing you real evidence and real truth, is that any researcher can go after that first researcher when he's given access, non-anonymous sources on the record. These people gave their names, their titles. It was verified that they were supervisors at Los Alamos in charge of Bob Lazar at the time, right? And they all said the same thing. Several of them, he was never a scientist at Los Alamos. He was a low-level technician, electronics technician. So the story quickly falls apart because the supporters of Bob Lazar's story, especially and including Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, always say like, well, he said he was a scientist at Los Alamos, and he was. No, he wasn't, because we have on the record sources that say, no, he was not a scientist. Did he work there? Yeah. And by the way, just to be clear, I have some experience in these areas because I worked at a robotics laboratory that had secret projects. It was very prestigious. But you know what I did there? I was the server monkey. I was the Linux system administrator for the lab. So that's all I did. I didn't know anything about the secret projects going on there because I was a low-level monkey. That's what Bob Lazar was, just a low-level guy that supported the real scientists at the laboratory. Now, what is interesting is that another lie that he was caught in is that he claimed to have worked at a subsidiary of EG&G. There's no record of his employment there. And EG&G is a company that is known for working with government on classified projects. However, when investigators contacted the company, they found no evidence that Lazar had ever worked for them. Additionally, there are, of course, several profit-driven motives behind Lazar's story. He's made appearances on radio shows, television programs. He's been paid to be in documentaries. He's done public speaking for big fees. I hear he got $25,000 for one speaking engagement. And of course, all these media appearances, including Joe Rogan, have helped to increase his profile and generate income. Back in the day, he sold a VHS tape about how the flying saucers work called Excerpts from the Government Bible. And it was $29.95, and you ordered it in the back of science magazines. So these talking points that these believers say, oh, well, he's got no reason to lie. He doesn't get any money out of this. He's been cashing in since this all began. He also got a very, very lucrative deal with Testers Model Corporation, who produced a model of the so-called flying saucer that he worked on. And he got a big upfront payment, and then he got a royalty for each model that they sold. I'm told that those models sold in the millions. I had one back in the early 90s. Further, he has also sold merchandise related to his story, such as books, VHS tapes, and posters recently. It is worth noting that Lazar has never, not once, made any significant scientific contributions. There are no published papers by the so-called scientist, Bob Lazar. He'd been employed in any reputable scientific position, which further raises suspicions about his true motivations, telling stories about flying saucers and aliens. A skeptical perspective on Bob Lazar's claims about aliens, flying saucers, and Area 51 reveals a mountain of inconsistencies, lies, and a profit-driven motive behind his story. But remember, it's not just a profit-driven motive for him, it's a profit-driven motive for George Knapp and later Jeremy Corbell to also sell the story. The evidence suggests that Bob Lazar's claims are simply not based on reality. It's important to approach Bob Lazar or any stories in the world of conspiracy with a critical eye and to seek out reliable sources of information. Also important to note, you know, I'm just going to say this, Bob Lazar is not now, nor has he ever been a scientist. He is a convicted pimp. He is a polygamist who had 2 wives at the same time. He is also a convicted criminal, having pled guilty to several charges. And he is also, at the time of his story, was a bankrupt business owner. A lot of people aren't aware of that. But right before Bob Lazar came out with his story, he declared bankruptcy and he owed everybody money, including his own parents, right before he came out with his story. Now, we're going to get into some of my other favorites here. But first, we will recognize the live chat and welcome all of you. Way behind, so let me just scroll to high heavens and get caught up here. 1 second here. We want to welcome returning subscribers. Thank you for being a subscriber. And we want to welcome new members of the live chat. Thank you for being here. So we are going to go through a great deal of evidence tonight, but I'm going to try to keep stuff I've already covered as quick and rapid fire as possible so that we can get through these stunning new revelations that cast further doubt on the legacy of Bob Lazar. Good point. Dome Busta Twitch says, Stephen, do you think Bob wasn't a pimp but actually was running a top secret alien breeding program for S4? Stranger things have happened. We want to thank Anthony Peterson for a kind and generous $2 super chat. Says, I still want my Element 115 anti-gravity engine. Well, I have a model of one in that sport model. I think there's a model of it in there. But we thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. It is much, much appreciated. We want to thank you, Patreon supporters, you channel members, Twitch subscribers, super chatters, super sticker purchasers, and PayPal pledgers. We love all of you. Thanks for helping us to praise the cash, Anthony.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right, so we have a great presentation. We've got a great show for you tonight, but I am going to be monitoring the live chat, and I'm going to be reading every single super chat as they come in, and thanking everybody. For those unaware, we read every single super chat, and we thank every single person who offers any support to the show. 1 second. Chuck Bam is saying it's not his real name. It was Norman Finkelstein. Well, I believe he was adopted, so that would be that. All right. So one of the first things that I want to share with you is a very important problem that George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have never ever addressed. For those unaware, shortly before Bob Lazar came out with his story, he helped his friend Gene Huff. Gene Huff was once a big part of the Bob Lazar story. And in fact, Gene Huff was his business partner, helping him to sell the story, get him bookings and appearances on documentaries, and sell those VHS tapes about his story in the back of the Science magazine and more. And Gene Huff was present for some of these events. So Gene Huff was friends with Bob Lazar, who did not at first know John Lear. And isn't it interesting, too? It's worthy to note that a man named John Lear, heir to the Lear throne, I suppose, Lear jet, big aviation family, he met George Knapp way before Bob Lazar. And just a few months before Bob Lazar came out with his story, John Lear was on a talk show with George Knapp telling essentially Bob Lazar's story, that there's this base somewhere on Area 51. They've got 9 flying saucers. They're trying to back engineer them. A couple months later, Bob Lazar comes out with a story. But what they forget to tell you is that in between George Knapp talking about that stuff on a talk show with George Knapp and Bob Lazar coming out with George Knapp, Gene Huff brought Bob Lazar to John Lear's home to do a real estate appraisal. And while there, they started talking about flying saucers and aliens and things like that. And interestingly, Gene Huff and Bob Lazar did the real estate appraisal. Gene Huff had a real estate appraisal business for John Lear. And in exchange, there was no money. In exchange, John Lear was going to copy his whole collection of materials on the Billy Meyer case and give it to Gene Huff. So right after that real estate appraisal, Gene Huff and Bob Lazar, who hung out together, were like best friends. They hung out together and they looked at all the Billy Meyer material. Now remember, this is just two or 3 months, just a few months before Bob Lazar came out with his story. They got all the Billy Meyer material, the videotapes of the flying saucers, descriptions, pictures, everything. John Lear copied everything, his whole collection. That was the deal to get the real estate appraisal. And by the way, this is all on the record. John Lear has told this story himself. I'm paraphrasing. I apologize if I'm mangling the story, but you get the gist of it. So Gene Huff and Bob Lazar meet John Lear at his house, do the real estate appraisal. John Lear gives all this material on the Billy Meyer case to Bob Lazar and Gene Huff, and a few months later, suddenly Bob Lazar's telling stories about working on alien spacecraft at Area 51, and it's exactly as John Lear described it, and there's more. Thank you, Art and Paranormal, for the kind and generous $5 Canadian. Thank you for helping us.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
We're going to have a good night tonight. Thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. And then we've got UFO John Doe with a kind and generous $4.99. And thank you for being a member. And thank you, Art and Paranormal, for being a chat room moderator and for your kindness. And thank you, UFO John Doe. Did you see the Baghdad UFO Corbell release? Laugh out loud. Yeah, I did. And we'll get into that. But isn't it interesting? Don't you think he should have to prove this Bob Lazar story he made millions on was true before he starts giving us more garbage, right? I think so. But thank you for your generosity and your support of the show, UFO John Doe, and for being a member and helping us to praise the cash.
Raise the cash, raise the cash, raise the cash.
Thank you very much. And, it just jumped. And we thank you, Too Much Information, for a kind and generous $5 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. Praise the cash.
You're watching Truthseekers. Praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you very much. And I don't have the Praise the Cash shirt on tonight, but I do have the UFO Circle Jerkers. For those unaware, UFO Circle Jerkers are the true assholes that make this whole subject difficult. Those are the guys who do a terrible job interviewing these UFO profiteering whores like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. And instead of hitting them with all the evidence that we're going to show you tonight, they just, what's Bob Lazar really like, George Knapp? They do the UFO circle jerk. They make money being bottom feeders off of the UFO profiteering whores, right? Incredible. And by the way, our merchandise store is open. There's 2 of them now. There's an Amazon merchandise store for those of you who prefer the speed and have an Amazon account, or even if you don't, Amazon is usually much, much quicker. But then we also had a Redbubble merchandise store. So if you can't get delivery from Amazon in your country, just go to the Redbubble store. Both links are in the description of the video. And we thank all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Get some swag. I believe they are cotton, Chuck Bam, because I don't know. I'm not like allergic to polyester, but it doesn't it doesn't do me any favors on my skin, and it feels itchy to me. These don't feel itchy. I'm going to have to check the tag and get back to you. I'll do that when I get a chance. So here we go. The important point to realize is that Bob Lazar gets all of the material about the Billy Meyer case from John Lear just a few months before he comes out with his fantastical story about working on alien flying saucers. But there's a real problem, and that is, for those unaware too, Billy Meyer was proven to be a mega hoaxing clown. Billy Meyer was perhaps the biggest UFO hoaxer in history before the third phase of fake guys came along, the Cousins brothers. He was the biggest UFO hoaxer. Strings, hanging up models, and it's a whole thing. You can look it up. But anyway, this is the important part, and this is a drawing or a diagram by Michael Schratt, respected researcher. Once respected researcher. But this was still, this is 2019, so this is pre-hooking up with third fake, so we know it's good information. So this is the sport model beam ship side-by-side comparison. Now, on the left is Bob Lazar's sport model, the flying saucer he claimed to work on and even see a test flight of and go inside and work on the power system, right? On the right is Billy Meyer's beam ship from Switzerland from 1975. Now, remember, Bob Lazar got all the pictures of this stuff from Billy Meyer just a few months before he comes out with his story. So Michael Schratt asked a question, but before we get to the question, note the similar sensor array, nearly identified waveguide, same number of steps or ridges, slightly altered curvature of the outer rim. So the only thing that's different is the curvature of the outer rim. The rest of it is pretty much identical. Slightly altered bottom section. And again, the important thing to note is that Bob Lazar got pictures of Billy Meyer's so-called beam ships, and it's also very important to note that all of Billy Meyer's pictures were models. They were fake UFOs. So Bob Lazar gets all this material, sits around looking at it and watching it with Gene Huff, and suddenly he's working on flying saucers at Area 51. Also important to note that he was never a scientist. He's a convicted pimp, right? And a bankrupt business owner at the time he comes out with his story, but he was never a scientist. So Michael Schratt asked the question, did Bob Lazar copy details from the Billy Meyer beam ship to form the foundation of his Area 51 sport model story? Billy Meyer of Switzerland claimed extensive contacts with aliens and published many photos purported to show alien spacecraft. His works were popular in some circles in the 1980s. When Lazar emerged in 1989 with his Alien Tales, Lazar even said it, that the alien scout ship that he'd worked on in a secret program was astonishingly similar to what Meyer called the beam ship. Indeed, it was. Meyer was later proven to be a mega hoaxer. So isn't it interesting that Bob Lazar comes out with his story just a few months after he saw all these pictures, and suddenly he's at Area 51 working on a nearly identical alien spacecraft. This is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, why won't George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell tell you the truth about this? It's because it blows the whole story to shit. That's why. Blows the whole story to shit. And remember, this is just one data point on our mountain of data points that Bob Lazar is a fraud. His education's fake. He was never a real scientist. He lied about being a scientist at Los Alamos. He lied about going to MIT. He lied about going to Caltech. And apparently, allegedly, I think this is speculation. I'll freely admit that. But John Lear is on record saying that he gave all of his Billy Meyer tapes and copies of the photos to Gene Huff and Bob Lazar right after they did that real estate appraisal. And if we timeline it, it was just a few months before Bob Lazar comes out with George Knapp telling fantastical fairy tales about working on nearly the exact same spaceship as a hoax or fake spaceship. This, I think, sheds a lot of detail on the Bob Lazar story and why Jeremy Corbell, right? Jeremy Corbell, are you an intellectual coward or a weakling? Intellectual weakling? If you are so sure that Bob Lazar is telling the truth and his story is 100% true, why have you never told everyone the truth about this? This is one data point. I got more for you, Corbell, you clown. I got a lot more for you, you clown. Keep doing the circus clown dance, disinformation peddling asshole. We have the truth here. You have stories and a lot more money. He's got a lot more money. I'll give him that. But, you know, it's important that we recognize that Jeremy Corbell thinks he won because the people who are skeptical and telling you the truth about this story haven't made millions of dollars on it. And he has. So somehow in his twisted imagination world of make-believe, he's won because he has made millions of dollars lying to you. And let's be very, very clear. A lie by omission is still a lie. Guess who sent Jeremy Corbell this information about the beam ship? Me, alien scientist, and others before he made the documentary. Would he, grow a set of balls or suddenly, develop a conscience or some kind of moral compass and tell viewers of his so-called documentary film about the truth, and show people this in his film? He was sent this. He was sent this by multiple researchers. Cut out of the film. The reason that Jeremy Corbell has made millions of dollars selling this fake story is because he does the lie by omission. He only gives you half of the story. Tonight, welcome to Truthseekers. You're going to get the other half of the story. So, interestingly, I don't have it to play at the moment, but I have it somewhere. I'm going to put it up on our channel here. There is a clip of John Lear giving the basics of Bob Lazar's story months before Bob Lazar would do that too. There's spacecraft in a secret hangar off of Area 51. I believe there's 9 of them, John Lear said, and they're trying to back engineer them. Many people have theorized that John Lear, Gene Huff, and Bob Lazar got together and created the story together. I don't know if that's true, but considering John Lear was telling parts of the story months before Bob Lazar was, I think there's a good possibility that is a possibility that we must consider. Let me shut down a few things here and catch up with the live chat once again. Thank you, Windswept, for your kind and generous $5 super sticker. Michael Crudell, he has pay stubs. Yes, and they're fake. We're going to get into that. The W-2 is fake. The W-2 is fake. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll skip ahead and do that right now, Michael. And I get that. That is the talking point of the liars. They tell you he's got pay stubs, but they forget to give you the rest of the truth about that W-2 being 100% completely and totally provably a fake W-2. Not for the least of which reason is the pitiful amount of money that he claims to have made as a senior staff level physicist. The money's all wrong. That's the first problem with the W-2, but we'll get into that. Let me get back. Windswept with a kind and generous $5 super sticker. We want to thank you for your kindness, generosity, and helping us to praise the cash. You did have bumpers. Bumpers not. There we go. Okay, one second here. I'm going to shut down. I don't know if you're anything like me, but my computer often looks like a real ADD problem. Listen, just because I have 85 tabs open at the same time doesn't. And we're experiencing some strangeness, so just bear with me for a second. All right, I've shut down everything, everything except that which I don't need. All right, we're going to get to the W-2. All right, let me share my screen. And we want to thank all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Thank all of you for being here. We've got a great crowd tonight. I love to see it. Love to see it. All right, so let's get into that so-called pay stub. First of all, there is major problems. And we're going to get into this so-called badge too. Did you know this so-called security badge is 100% faked, false, not period correct, and more? But we're going to get into that. First of all, the employer's name, address, and zip code. He lists United States Department of Naval Intelligence. No, that is completely and totally the wrong terminology, because at the time that he gave George Knapp this W-2 to prove that he really worked there, it didn't exist. The United States Department of Naval Intelligence ended after World War II, and it became the Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI. This is an amateur hour mistake that one could speculate was made by somebody who was not aware of the terminology, or that the terminology had changed. Big amateur hour mistake. And also, people have checked. There is no United States Department of Naval Intelligence at this zip code or anywhere within the United States government. Further, the employee identification number. Go check with the IRS. I'll give you a higher quality scan of this if you need it. But that employer identification number does not exist. It's not known to the IRS. And by the way, I talked to somebody who worked for the IRS since 1984. And I said, well, could you check if it used to exist? He said, no, if it used to exist, it would be it would still be, known to us. It would just, be as inactive or no longer in use, but they would still have it on record. And of course, K6722MAJ, right? At the time, the majestic documents were all the rage, and he just happens to put MAJ in the employer identification number. Come on. And I can't recall off the top of my head, but this other number is also a problem. And Bob Lazar claimed to have worked at the base sporadically for months and months and months and months, and the pay is almost janitor pay. $958 is all that he made to work on alien spacecraft for 6 or 8 months. Now, I realize that he only went there occasionally, according to him, but still, this amount is ridiculous. That's like janitor money at Area 51. That's not senior staff level physicist money. So it's largely believed by any serious researcher who has done their due diligence and actually looked into this W-2 provided by Bob Lazar that it's fake. It's just fake. At the time, you could get a blank W-2 and stick it in a typewriter and write whatever you want on it. Doesn't mean it's real. Doesn't mean he actually worked for the government. And by the way, I challenge George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. Show us any piece of verifiable evidence or proof that Bob Lazar ever worked for the government. You're the clowns running around making millions of dollars calling him a, quote, former government scientist. And when you do that without evidence or proof, you're committing an act of fraud. There is not now, nor has there ever been, verifiable proof or evidence that, one, Bob Lazar was ever a real scientist, or two, Bob Lazar ever worked for the United States government directly. Period. So the W-2 is fake. Do you see how the litany of lies are adding up here? Oh, and I apologize here. I didn't realize we were in that small mode. In case anybody needs to screen capture that, do your own research, but it is very clear to any researcher who has actually looked into it. And by the way, we are going to do a whole separate video just on the W2 with new and fresh sources, just because we want to make sure that this argument about the W2 does not continue. It's a ridiculous argument. There's too many problems and inconsistencies. The W2 is not real. You know what else isn't real? This so-called security badge of his. It's completely and totally fake. And by the way, at the time, Bob Lazar ran a photo processing plant. He would have been well able to create a fake badge, right? He definitely would have been able to create this fake badge. And another problem, why would the badge have U.S. Department of Naval Intelligence if that does not exist at the time that he claimed to work there? That department doesn't exist. Another amateur hour mistake, proving that Bob Lazar concocted and manufactured his fake story to make money. And by the way, I just want to make sure that I mention that I grew up with this story. If anyone on God's green earth wants this story to be true, it's me. This is perhaps my favorite of all UFO stories that I've ever read about, followed, been involved with, or investigated. I truly wish the story was true. So I'm not here, just to rain on your parade. I was one of you. I was a true believer of this thing for a long, long time. And it took some time, and I would even say deprogramming, until I got in it. Yes. UFO John Doe with a kind and generous $4.99. And thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show, and for also reminding me of something that I left out. So this is very, very important. But first, let's thank UFO John Doe and thank him for being a member. Thank all of our members, all of our Patreon supporters, all you kind and generous benefactors throwing some money in our hat. Thank you for helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you, UFO John Doe, and all of you for your kindness, generosity, and support. Okay, especially because I can't make millions of dollars lying to people. I'm sorry, I have something called a conscience, right? Or let's bring that back up because UFO John Doe brings up a good point that we covered in our previous coverage. On an episode of Larry King, I don't think it was called Larry King Live at that point. It was after he left CNN, but he interviewed Bob Lazar and Jeremy Corbell. So during that interview, he was asked, how big the craft were. And to the best of my knowledge and recollection, he said they were 52 feet in diameter. But there's a huge problem with that because in his original drawings, and you can find them, Bob Lazar wrote and showed that the hangar bay doors at his secret base were between 35 foot and 40 feet wide. So how do you fit a 52-foot spacecraft flying saucer in or out of a 35 or a 40-foot door? You can't. And this is the so-called minutia that Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and Bob Lazar don't want you to think about, right? And by the way, they never addressed that. That's a pretty big inconsistency. Bob Lazar, on the record, the hangar bay doors were 35 to 40 feet wide in drawings he made back in the day, in 89 or 90, right? Original drawings. He said the hangar bay doors were 40 feet wide. Then on Larry King, he says that the spacecraft were 52 feet in diameter. Well, must be alien technology to get in or out. What is this, Flight of the Navigator? It shrinks up to get in or out of the hangar bay doors and then pops back to full size? No. This is the hallmark of a liar, of a fictitious story, and a man who can't remember the lies that he told before So the new lies he tells don't match up with the old lies. You see the problem here? All right, now we're going to go now to the security badge, because Louis Caetano, who has been a let me see. Louis Caetano runs a blog called Ufology is Corrupt. Yeah, because it is. And he's been a guest here several times. And he has an excellent, by the way, thank you, Freya Anderson, for a kind and generous $4.99 super chat. Thank you for helping us to praise the cash. Thank you, Freya.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. So Louis Caetano has done a great job. We're not going to spend too long on it, but the security badge is fake. And one of our users here is credited in this security badge story. And that would be Amy, who is a viewer here and a chat room participant, a longtime show supporter. And Amy did send me this information too at the time she sent it to Mr. Caetano. However, I think I was real busy at the time, and Louis ran with the story, and I just said, he did a great job. I'm not going to do the story too. Amy says, after reviewing your excellent website, I thought you might find it interesting that I have found the backstory on Bob Lazar's security badge. He, in fact, got the design for it from seeing John Lear's expired test site badge. Lear was cleared in the early 1980s to fly over and take radiation measurements. So Bob Lazar sees, he's hanging out with John Lear. He sees his badge. Suddenly he makes a badge a lot like it. Area 51 Groom Lake Complex ran out of the Air Force, used the same badges with a dosimeter holder issued by the Department of Energy, Nevada. And by the way, Amy Collins' father verifiably worked at Area 51. So this information is true and accurate. And again, hey, Jeremy Corbell, hey, George Knapp, you clowns. We've got on the record verifiable sources. You have anonymous sources backing up your convicted pimp, fake scientist clown story. We have real sources. You see the difference? The old style badge had the blue octagonal stripes, but the newer type used in the late 1980s was simply plain white with embossed gold NV markings. The expires in depth was moved to the bottom near the name. Other details, such as Mike Thigpen's name as a clearance processor, could have been learned from Lear. Also, the details, such as how they paid for food at the cafeteria, Lear may have provided him a bogus answer. I think they just swiped the barcode at the bottom of the badge or typed it in, and it was charged back against the badge holder at their respective agency. I have attached a graphic I made about where I knew him to get his information. Lear was definitely a partner in cooking this all up. The Zeta Reticuli and Madge markings on the badge were a result of Bill Cooper's information, which Lear not only had, but likely spread photocopies of like penny candy to his friends. So parts of this came from Bill Cooper. Parts of this badge came from John Lear. Had Lazar either made the W-2 or badge with Office of Naval Intelligence as opposed to Department, he would have been in real trouble with the feds. Oh, that's another reason he might not have gotten in trouble for forging a government document. He could have faced criminal prosecution for that. So maybe putting the wrong name of the employer as Department of Naval Intelligence was intentional. And I apologize. It was Amy Collins' stepfather, worked at Nevada test sites in the 1980s and gave me his further insight into the badge issue. So here we have it. Where did the badge come from? It's an amalgam of stories from Bill Cooper about MJ-12 or magic, John Lear's badge, and he verifiably actually worked there. Isn't it interesting, right? And it's just great to me that we can see that every time we can fact check Bob Lazar, it turns out that he is lying. Isn't that interesting, right? I can't prove that he didn't work on flying saucers, but I can prove he made up the badge. We can prove he made up the W-2. We can prove he made up his education. We can prove he was a convicted pimp who ran a whorehouse, right? These are not things real scientists don't run whorehouses. Show me another real scientist that actually runs whorehouses, right? You can't. They worry about funding and grants and their reputation. Real scientists don't run whorehouses, right? Watch, Eric Weinstein's going to open a whorehouse next week and make me the laughing stock of this whole community, right? No, real scientists do not run whorehouses, right? I don't know what to tell you. DJ D's is here. Says, hey, everyone, how to go to the grocery store. You don't shop during my show. You do that later, bro. Come on, DJ D's. Welcome and thanks for being a member. Welcome all our members in the live chat. So, boy, we've got a lot more. I'm not going to spend too long on the badge. We could get into the minutia. I put the link to the description in the description of this video of the badge story from Louis Caetano. So if you want, to get into that level of detail, here we go. But Louis Caetano has another excellent blog, which I also put in the description of this video, called Bob Lazar's Litany of Lies and Whoppers, right? Here is more information that Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp don't want you to know about because it blows the story to shit. That's why. YouTube user flip mode. Lazar doesn't even entertain the notion of contamination protocols. Lazar doesn't mention whether the ship had been disinfected of any alien pathogens before the humans were allowed to clamber around inside of it, pull pieces from it, etc. The possibility of such pathogens must surely weigh heavily on the minds of any organization involved in recovering alien technology, and would follow the precedent of space missions undertaken by the United States. This is a very good point. Bob Lazar never mentioned anything about decontamination or anything. The Apollo astronauts had to undergo a period of quarantine after returning from the moon on the off chance that they might be harboring alien pathogens. The Viking landers that traveled to Mars underwent major decontamination procedures to ensure that any terrestrial organisms didn't hitch a ride and compromise the results of its life detector experiments. Yet Lazar doesn't even allude to or even hint any safety protocols or procedures for dealing with any of the 9 flying saucers he supposedly saw at S4. Yeah, and this one is going to become very, very important as we get into the new information that we're going to share from Signals Intelligence. It's abundantly obvious that someone like Lazar would have been seen as a security liability. Given his marital issues, dire financial troubles, remember, he declared bankruptcy right before he claims to have worked at Area 51. And it was the height of the Cold War. For that alone, being broke and bankrupt, they would not have given him a clearance, in my opinion, because it was the height of the Cold War. And you got to make sure that everybody working on your projects is financially stable enough to withstand bribe attempts by the Soviet Union or China. You don't hire somebody to work on super secret projects that is a risk that is at great risk financially of being bribed. Tendency for exaggeration, self-promotion, and lies. Lazar was a poor fit for any highly classified program, regardless of credentials. Such people are seen as easily manipulated by enemy intelligence agencies and as a likely source for leaks. And this is even before we consider his close association with known UFO fanatic, some would say lunatic, John Lear, by the way, rest in peace. In other words, we're being asked by Lazar to believe that the U.S. military knowingly hired someone who had clearly been a KGB GRU magnet. He then affirms that he's exactly the sort of person who wouldn't be chosen for such projects when he purports that he squealed to his friends and drove around with MJ-12 license plates on his Corvette. Yeah. He made lots of nonsensical claims about particle accelerators when he was younger, getting the basic principles of chemistry wrong. Oftentimes in interviews, Bob Lazar gives absolutely nonsensical, non-science answers to science questions. That is further proof that he is a convicted pimp who ran a whorehouse pretending to be a real scientist. He is not now, nor has he ever been a real scientist, nor will George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell or him ever prove that he's a real scientist. And by the way, I have it on good authority that Even people like Joe Rogan may be waking up to the fact that he's a convicted pimp fake scientist and may be changing their tune about the convicted pimp fake scientist. Important to note that Bob Lazar, I'm not going to read all of this. Again, the link is in the description of the video if you want more detail. But I can tell you that we heard at the beginning of this broadcast that George Knapp claimed that Bob Lazar had a particle accelerator in his bedroom. Go ask a real physicist, can you have a particle accelerator in your bedroom? Go ask him. It's not possible. Not possible in the least. Bob Lazar at various times has claimed to have a particle accelerator. No, he didn't. And real scientists, people like, I don't know, Jeremy Rise, alien scientist, and people like Stanton Friedman, nuclear physicist, confirmed for me that you cannot have a particle accelerator in your bedroom. But George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and Bob Lazar are running around telling all you UFO dorks that he did have a particle accelerator in his bedroom. That should be proof alone to you that this man is not a scientist. He doesn't even know how any of this works. All right. And then there was the Robert Krengle. Corbell claimed that Krengle recalled that Bob Lazar was a scientist at Los Alamos. He later retracted or walked back that statement because his only indication that Bob Lazar was a scientist is that he did science stuff in his spare time and he had a pocket protector. The real and actual supervisors of Bob Lazar are now on record confirming that Bob Lazar was never a scientist at Los Alamos National Labs. These guys, just like the government, love these acronyms. LANL is Los Alamos National Labs. Lazar couldn't name his supervisors at Caltech and MIT. I think that should be professors at Caltech and MIT. Instead, naming people who never worked at those institutions. In fact, when he was asked to name some of his professors during a public appearance, he named his, I believe, Pierce Junior College electronics professor, who never worked at MIT and never worked at Caltech. More proof. Listen, if you're doing an MIT program, you remember some of your professors, right? And they remember you. Nobody remembers Bob Lazar. His education is completely and totally 100% fake because he is a convicted pimp fake scientist who ran whorehouses. He was not a senior staff level physicist ever. The supposed topic of his MIT master's thesis was magnetohydrodynamics, a field of study which had by then become fairly common trope in ufology as purported means for flying saucer propulsion. Further, nobody's ever been able to find his master's thesis. I know the Men in Black explanation, but Stanton Friedman talked to legal people, lawyers, who said that if anybody tried to erase a master's thesis, including the government, they would have massive legal problems. You can't just erase a master's thesis. It goes out into all these public databases and science servers all over the pre-internet, DARPANet, and all these things. You couldn't erase it. You could not erase somebody's master thesis. By the way, he's missing two. He's missing a master's thesis from Caltech, and he's missing Caltech. He's missing a master's thesis in electronics technology, a program they did not have a master's program in the 80s when Bob Lazar claimed to have done a master's program there. How are you doing a master's program as a school that doesn't even have that master's program? His education is fake. And he's also missing his MIT thesis, which he once claimed was in magnetohydrodynamics. All right, he was friends with John Lear before coming out with his story. Lewis gets into how the story mirrors many of the parts of Edward Billy Meyer. By the way, it's important to note that much of what Bob Lazar gravity power system, so did the S4 Sport model. And they look identical. Isn't that interesting? Great. Lazar is now associated with Jeremy Corbell, another peddler of nonsense and pseudoscience. Lazar's fans claim he doesn't associate with the UFO community, even though he gives speaking tours to UFO conventions, relies upon UFO-affiliated people to promote and validate his story, and to keep him relevant. litters his own story with UFO lore, and sells flying saucer merchandise on his company website. The government supposedly allowed him to work on their most sensitive project and assigned him a flying saucer that just happened to look virtually identical to the Type 1 beam ship. We've covered that. Lazar's claimed that Soviet scientists were invited to take part in the reverse engineering program. Here's a big problem. He claimed that Russian scientists and Soviet scientists were also involved in the program for a time, but then they lost access to the program. This was during the height of the Cold War. Go talk to anybody that knows anything about the Cold War or Cold War history. No way on God's green earth would you invite Russian or Soviet scientists onto Area 51, where all your most secret sensitive projects are being tested. No way on God's green earth. That is another good indicator of the story being fake. We're going to skip that one. He talks about an S4 facility at Papoose Dry Lake where 9 flying saucers were kept, except no such facility exists. By the way, there is now ample and supportive evidence. A man named Mr. Freeman, Jerry Freeman, I believe, was interested in the path of the 49ers that they took on the Trail of Tears, and he walked all through Area 51. There was nothing at the so-called Papoose Dry Lake bed. There was no roads, no guard shack, no oppressive military service, military personnel guarding it. Nobody stopped him. He was able to just walk right up to the lake bed and the area right where Bob Lazar claimed the hangar bay doors were. Nothing was there. Further, there have been recent flyovers that prove there's nothing there that Bob Lazar described. Nothing, period. There's nothing there. Now, I know some of you say, well, after Bob Lazar blew the whistle, they just moved it, the facility. Great, except we have on-the-record statements from an on-the-record Area 51 security guard. Again, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell are clowns who cite anonymous sources to back up Bob's story. Everything that we're talking about here, we have on-the-record verified sources. So we covered this in a previous show, but just very quickly, there was an Area 51 security guard who verifiably worked there. We have all the paperwork. He really did work there. He even sued the government for working there because of those toxic pits and burn pits. That's how we know he worked there. His name is in the court documents as having worked there during the period that Bob Lazar claimed to work at Area 51 S4. So the story comes out. He's an Area 51 security guard. He's interested. He goes and checks all the flight logs. Wouldn't you know? There is no mention of a Bob Lazar in or out of Area 51 for years previous. He additionally gets curious enough to drive out. He's been all over Area 51. He drives out to the Papoose Dry Lake bed. And this is in 1989 when Bob first came out with his story and first revealed his name. They checked the flight logs. No Bob Lazar. He never flew in or out of Area 51. That's the only way you're getting in or out, is flying in or out. And he was not in any of the check-in or check-out logs. There's 2 sets of logs. One for the flight, one for checking in, one for checking out, one for the flight out. So 4 sets of logs. This Area 51 security guard, and by the way, we have that interview here on our channel. There's no Bob Lazar in any of the flight logs or check-in or check-out logs at Area 51. The Area 51 security guard is curious enough. He drives out to Papoose Lake, drives right up to the mountain. Guess what? There's no road. There's guard shacks. There's nothing that Bob Lazar described. And that 1980, right after his story just came out. So unless we believe that the Men in Black, on the same day the television broadcast happened, flew out there and covered up an entire alien secret research base facility, Bob Lazar lied about Area 51 S4. He made it up. He's reputed to have smuggled Element 115 out of S4, yet he had to reconstruct his S4 security badge. Oh, yeah, by the way, when caught and told that that security badge was fake, he claimed that he recreated it. That wasn't the original badge. He produced a supposed W-2 tax form purporting to show that he worked for the Department of Naval Intelligence, except that department didn't exist. He says this makes no sense when we're referring to the alien chip's workability, but ensures us that it does work. So it just works like magic. In other words, he wants to talk out of both sides of his mouth, giving us nothing that allows us to distinguish his claims from the total nonsense. We just have to take his word for it. Why does Lazar provide hardly any quantitative data for what he saw? Isn't he meant to have worked on this contraption as a physicist? That's a good point. No real proof. He claims the technology should be in the hands of the scientific community, yet Lazar has steadfastly refused to ever be cross-examined by actual scientists about the technology he supposedly worked on or about element 115. Many scientists in the United States and beyond have invited Bob Lazar, and they want to interview him. They want to cross-examine him. They want to talk to him about the science of what he worked on. He doesn't want to do it. He does not want to do it. On the movement of flying saucer, people claim that Lazar predicted how the gimbal UFO moved. That is entirely inaccurate. These movements were described long before Bob Lazar in 1966, 1950, and so on. All right. He claims that he risked his life and that he exposed S4 for the sake of the scientific community, but also tries to exude an air of cool and relaxed indifference to whether people believe him or not. We're being asked to believe that Lazar was given a top secret Q clearance after only a week or so of his EG&G interview. Yeah, Q clearance takes 6 months. It doesn't take a week or a few weeks, as Bob Lazar claimed. The lies just add up. It's lie after lie after lie after lie. Lying Lazar. He claims he caught a glimpse of something that might have been an alien when he walked past the door at the S4 base, but then he was told to keep his eyes forward. Yeah, then he walked that all the way back. Here's some of his products, right? Sport model mug, engineering details, sport model sketch t-shirt, right? But he doesn't make any money from this. All he does is try to make money from this. All this man has done is try to make money from this. All right, now we're going to get on to the last of our journey into this. And hold on one second. I apologize. I got caught in the website there, right? All right, 1 second here. Let me just get caught up for the live chat. All right, I think we got them all. If I miss one, well, let me know. But I think we're going to get them all. All right, Peter Finley with kind and generous $5 says new T-shirt idea: real scientists don't run whorehouses. Yeah, and we're going to put his face on it because you know what? I'm tired of this shit. If Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and Bob Lazar can make money from this 100% completely fake story told to us by a fake scientist with a fake education who's a convicted pimp that ran a whorehouse, then I'm going to make some money too. Good idea. Real scientists don't run whorehouses. We're making that. We're making that shirt. Thank you, Peter Finley, for your kindness, generosity, and support, and for giving us a good idea to praise. We're going to be praising the cash off the Bob Lazar fake story. Victor Wag with a kind and generous Canadian $6.99 says, how about the super secret hand scanners as seen in Close Encounters? Yes, Jeremy Corbell hyped that film up, saying there'll be all kinds of new information, new revelations. We're taking the mic back. We're going to prove that Bob Lazar's story is true. Bullshit. The only thing new in the whole Area 51 flying saucers and Bob Lazar, by the way, it wasn't a documentary. It was a Bob Lazar is telling the truth fluff piece. So congratulations, Jeremy Corbell. Did you get in there and really lick Bob Lazar's ass? Wow, it didn't like that. I won't do that again. The screen froze. Yeah. He loves licking Bob Lazar's butthole. That's what he does. He absolutely, Jeremy Corbell just licked Bob Lazar's butthole for a 2-hour documentary. That's what he did, Victor Wag. But back to the hand scanners. Jeremy Corbell previously said that Close Encounters was his favorite movie. Then he pretended he never saw it or he didn't remember seeing the hand scanners in it. He's on record saying he watched Close Encounters like 100 times. The only thing new in the Bob Lazar documentary was this stupid hand scanner. that was in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So certainly that predates Bob Lazar's story. Bob could have seen that in there and folded that into his story. And Jeremy Corbell found some examples of that model of a hand scanner while he was licking Bob Lazar's butthole.
I love licking Bob Lazar's butthole. It's my favorite butthole to lick.
I stand by what I've said. Jeremy Corbell is a UFO circle jerker. He did not, and buy the shirt, okay? Buy the shirt. Buy our crap, all right? He did not make a documentary. He made a film whereby he licked Bob Lazar's butthole. And only, listen to all of this evidence we've shared with you tonight. None of that was in his film. Do you know why? Because it's the truth, and Bob Lazar was a convicted pimp who ran a whorehouse. He wasn't a real scientist. He's a fake scientist. Jeremy Corbell is so stupid, he made a whole documentary. He made a whole documentary, friends, about a convicted pimp, fake scientist. You dumbass. You made a whole documentary, you dumbass, about a convicted pimp. Fake scientist. You jerk off. What a jerk off Jeremy Corbell is. But thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show, Victor Wag. We appreciate you and all of you. So now we're going to get into these recent revelations, which, by the way, are more proof that Bob Lazar could not and would never have been hired to work at a super secret facility like Area 51, and for sure not an even more secret facility like S4. And again, S4 doesn't exist. We talked about that Area 51 security guard. Here's another one. Here's one for George Knapp, you liar. George Knapp lied to everyone for years, because you remember that Area 51 security guard? When he checked all those logs and there was no Bob Lazar, and then he drove out and found out there's nothing at that dry lake bed, no road, no gar shack, no oppressive military presence guarding it, nothing. And by the way, he drove out there right after George Knapp's second report where Bob Lazar named himself, right? That Area 51 security guard felt bad for George Knapp, and he did not want George Knapp, who was a respected local reporter, to embarrass himself with a completely fake story. So what did he do? He called up George Knapp, and he said, you better be careful with this Bob Lazar. He never stepped foot on Area 51. He's not in any of the flight logs. He's not in any of the check-in or check-out logs. We checked. I worked security there, and gave Knapp all of his credentials. Let him say, go verify. Yeah, I work here. There was no Bob Lazar in or out of Area 51 ever, and I get it. So many people are going to say, he didn't work at Area 51. He worked at S4. He always said he flew in and out of Area 51 on the Janet Airlines. So why then is there no record of him in those flight logs? Everyone flying in or out of a top secret facility is logged with their real and legal name. No Bob Lazar. Why is he not in any of the check-in or check-out logs? Before you step one foot on that base, you are checked in. After you're leaving, you are checked out. No Bob Lazar. This Area 51 security guard calls up George Knapp. George Knapp wasn't interested in hearing anything like the truth. So George Knapp, I suppose, at that point in time had a crossroads, right? He was at a crossroads. Do I tell everybody the truth about the fact that this real and verifiable Area 51 security guard has contacted me and told me that Bob Lazar's story is likely fake? By that point, George Knapp already knew that Bob Lazar's education was completely fake, and he admits that to this day. Well, I can't verify his education. That's probably fake. And we get all the excuses. Oh, he made up his education in order to get a better job, right? Don't you think when they're checking you for top secret clearance, they check if your degrees are real? They're not just going to hire you and give you top secret clearance. I don't know. My only experience was working at a robotics lab that did some government projects. And I got to tell you, they all but like asked me to bend over and checked in my asshole. They were talking to my neighbors, relatives, teachers from grade school, but we're supposed to believe that they gave a fake scientist a job without checking his education, right? Okay. My point on the Knapp situation is he was told early on that the story was likely fake by somebody that really worked at Area 51, and he had a choice to make. He could either double down and keep selling this fake story, or he could tell everybody the truth, that Bob Lazar was likely telling a tall tale. He ran with telling the story as true. And there at the crossroads, he went down the left. I swear the men in black are after our broadcast. My screen keeps blanking out, but we're going to continue, right? Or maybe it's the CIA that likes the Bob Lazar narrative being out there, so people are looking for aliens and not what they're really doing at Area 51. So George Knapp had a choice to make. He chose the left-hand path, and he's been lying about this story ever since. And the lie, both from Corbell and from Knapp, works as the lie by omission. All they had to do to keep making money telling this story is not tell you the truth, like the truth about the Area 51 security guard that I just told you. And isn't it interesting, right? Isn't it interesting that I'm getting penalized for telling you guys the truth, and they're making millions of dollars for lying to you? That makes me sad. But what are we going to do? I'm going to try to shut down a few more things here to prevent the men in black from taking over the broadcast. So there is a researcher called Signals Intelligence. He was the wonderful researcher. And by the way, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and I just want to put it on the record. I am not Signals Intelligence. Okay? Many people have claimed that I'm Signals Intelligence, and for one reason or another, I chose that name, and I'm writing that blog. And I think that people have come up with these. I think people believe that because Signals Intelligence did a lot of investigatory work like I did, and he came up with a lot of new information proving Bob Lazar is a fake and a fraud. And so have I, and so has Louis Catano, but we're not. We're all separate individuals. Just want to put that out there. People can believe what they want. I'm not him. And by the way, I have invited Signals Intelligence here for an interview, but I believe that he prefers to not be so public. He just wants to write his blog and do his work. And he does amazing work. So we're going to get into the gist of his new revelations. By the way, the link is in the description of the video. And it's called Bob Lazar Shadows. And here, boy, I don't know where he found this one, but he did. This is a picture of Bob Lazar and his first wife. And we're going to get into that. This is them at a science museum. So pretty interesting. And for those unaware, apparently Bob married a woman that was much, much older than him. One second here. I had this already prepped and ready to go. There is such a great deal of information about Bob Lazar's early years before he came out with his story here. One second. I had this queued up. So, we're going to concentrate solely on Bob Lazar and his wife. His first wife, and this is the wife who tragically committed suicide shortly after Bob Lazar married a second wife. Bob Lazar and his first wife, Carol, married on July 27th, 1980. According to Carol's family, they met while working together at Fairchild. The name of the bride given on Bob and Carol's 1980 marriage certificate was Carol Nadine Strong. That's what I've known it to be. And she was some 15 or more years his senior, I believe. And here's where things get interesting. After Carol's death in 1986, the certificate of death was issued and listed a different birth date for Carol, March 21st, 1942, as well as a different surname for her father. Who knows why that is? And there is also, she used the name Esslinger for a while, right? Yeah, and here we see that she used Carol Esslinger on some of the marriage records, and they were married from 1980 to 1986. Tragically, his first wife killed herself shortly after Bob Lazar married a second woman. So here we go. A Trouble's Life. This is his wife, Carol Nadine Esslinger, and two associates, Gary Burkett, a member of the Oakland chapter of Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, and his wife, Victoria. Remember, this is Bob Lazar's wife, entered the home of Dennis Pisario. Mr. Pisario and Mrs. Burkett had allegedly gotten into a violent argument weeks prior. According to testimony presented in court, 3 individuals armed with pistols entered the house. Carol held a guest of Pisario's, Eugene Day, at gunpoint in an adjacent room while the other 2 stabbed and shot Mr. Pisario to death. Again, this is Bob Lazar's wife who goes into this man's home with 2 members of the Hells Angels and holds a gun on a guest while the Hells Angels kill this man that they had a problem with. The attackers handcuffed Day to the shelf bracket and handed him a syringe, which he was told contained a solution that would incapacitate him. The attackers ordered Day to inject himself with the solution so they could escape. Day, however, managed to inject only a small amount, squirting the rest of the solution onto the floor. The arm that was injected later required surgery to repair the damage the caustic solution had caused. At some point, Day was able to throw a wall plaque at Carol and escaped to a neighbor's house where he contacted authorities. And here's newspaper reports. The day after Pisario's murder, a routine tow truck call led to Carol's second arrest. Carol and a 15-year-old boy had become stuck in river mud in her car and required a tow truck to pull them out. Apparently, she always liked younger men. The tow truck arrived. The car was towed to a nearby shop for repairs. However, when the tow truck driver arrived at the shop, Carol and the boy had fallen asleep in the truck. Suspecting that something was amiss, the truck driver called the police. Upon their arrival, the police officers awakened Carol and the boy and conducted a search of the car. During the search, they discovered amphetamine powder and tablets, as well as stolen goods. Both were promptly arrested and charged with the possession of dangerous drugs and possession of property with altered serial numbers. So they had stolen property with them. Carol was arrested for her involvement in Pisario's death and charged with second-degree murder, conspiracy, and false imprisonment. After an initial not guilty plea, she allegedly pled guilty to the second-degree murder charge. On March 12, 1975, Carol, Bob Lazar's first wife, was sentenced to prison at Frontera, a women's correctional institution located in Chino, California. The length of Carol's sentence was not reported. At the time, the minimum sentence for second-degree murder in California was set at 5 years. Gary Burkett, who also pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, received an interdeterminate prison sentence ranging from 5 to 15 years with an additional enhancement. How much of the likely 5-year sentence Carol actually served remains uncertain. Per California law, she would have been required to serve a minimum of two-thirds of her sentence before becoming eligible for release. Based on the requirement and accounting for the time served, the earliest date of her potential release would have been November 1977. Carol's life was shaped by a variety of challenges, including early exposure to drugs and crime, a lifelong addiction to amphetamines. We're going to say that again. She had a lifelong addiction to amphetamines. If you're hanging out with the Hells Angels, you're probably doing methamphetamines. And several pregnancies, all of which she put up for adoption. 3 of her family members were interviewed about her life and her marriage to Bob Lazar. Susan Hack, one of Carol's adopted out daughters, Don Lenahan, Carol's cousin, and Renee Wakefield, another cousin. And this researcher, Signals Intelligence, interviews 3 people all about this woman, Carol, Bob Lazar's first wife, and her relationship with Bob Lazar. We're going to skip all of that. Again, the article is in the description of the video. There is some good information there and background about what kind of a person Bob Lazar was. It doesn't paint him in a very good light. But for time's sake, we're going to skip ahead. Now, why is this relevant? This is relevant for several reasons, but the first of which is, let's just review here. So this woman, Carol Nadine Strong, or Esslinger, or there's like 3 names here for his first wife. She was involved heavily with the drug scene, with methamphetamines. Further, she was a known associate and criminal with the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. That's a real problem. And why is that a problem? Because Bob Lazar claimed that he got Q top secret clearance to work at Area 51 and S4 on those flying saucers, except there's a real problem with that based on this new revelation. And that is, I believe there's no way on God's green earth that Bob Lazar would ever be given a clearance for any secret government project, to work on any secret government project based on his wife and her affiliation with a known criminal organization, the Hells Angels. Second, she has arrests, drug arrests. She has multiple arrests for drug-related offenses all around methamphetamines. And she has pled guilty to essentially second-degree murder and served jail time. So when someone is doing a check of somebody's known associates, when they're getting a clearance like Bob Lazar claimed to have, they're going to check into the guy's wife. And as soon as they find out that the guy's wife was hanging out with Hells Angels and literally committed a murder and has drug-related offenses on her record and a lifelong methamphetamine problem, denied. Now, I have to be very clear in saying that's my personal belief. But that belief is based on knowing and speaking with and consulting with several people that I know that we can verify had real clearances like Bob Lazar claimed to have had. If you remember that in 1988, 1989, this was the height of the Cold War. They're worried that they can't give clearance to anybody with criminal ties, drug problems, financial problems, right? Because that is a security risk. So not only did Bob Lazar declare bankruptcy and have massive financial debt and problems right before he claims to have gotten top secret Q clearance, but now we can see, based on the history of his wife, there's no way on God's green earth that they would give a man like that security clearance to work on anything top secret, or even probably even have a government job. A wife that has a known criminal history up to and including drug offenses and murder, and you're going to give that guy a security clearance? And we'll just hope that his wife doesn't, pump him for secrets and sell him to the Soviets. It's the height of the Cold War. There's no way on God's green earth. And of course, I freely admit this is my opinion. So I have a challenge to issue to anybody who thinks I'm wrong. Go find me any verifiable person who worked on top secret projects and had a Q clearance with the United States government to work on black projects, unidentified special access programs, work at Lockheed Skunk Works, work at Area 51, work at Los Alamos National Labs on secret projects, anything you want. Go find me any man who has a wife that was convicted of murder, has had lifelong drug problems, drug convictions, and was an associate of a known national criminal organization. Go find me one that got cleared. I'll wait. You're not going to find one. You're not going to find one. And if you do, I'll eat my shoes live on air. This is a real problem for the Bob Lazar peddler pushers, the profiteering whores who have been selling you this fake story for decades. This means the whole story falls apart. As if we didn't have enough. His education is fake. He ran a whorehouse. He doesn't know real physics or science. He's a fake scientist. He never went to MIT. He never went to Caltech. He lied about how those things get in and out of hangar bay doors that are too small for the ships to get in and out of. He lied about S4 and what's there. He lied about having a particle accelerator in his bedroom. He lied about stealing element 115 out of that top secret base. He lied to George Knapp about planning to blow up all of Las Vegas if anybody came after them. And by the way, isn't it interesting that George Knapp didn't call the authorities, right? He thinks there's somebody with the equivalent of a nuclear bomb about to detonate it, and he doesn't call the authorities, right? He just lets Bob Lazar say he's going to blow up all of Las Vegas with element 115 and a particle accelerator in his basement. And by the way, Bob Lazar lied about that raid, that FBI raid on his business. That had nothing to do with element 115 or his stupid flying saucer stories. That was a murder investigation because Bob Lazar was selling, I always get it wrong, thorium or thallium. I think it was thorium. I always mix up thorium and thallium. He was selling an element that allegedly somebody ordered from his business and used to murder their wife. So the feds and the local cops and cops from the local jurisdiction in which the murder took place executed a raid. And they went into Bob's business and they got the sales records of that element that was used in that murder case. And that's it. They weren't there all day. There wasn't 40 or 50 people like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell lied to you all about. And you know how I know that? I talked to the local sheriff. I talked to the FBI agents. I even talked to the guy in the hazmat suit. Yes, there was a guy in a hazmat suit. He sells dangerous chemicals. They sent him in just to check and clear the place and make sure that it was safe for the rest of the agents to go in there and get the records that they needed. Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, and Bob Lazar lied to everyone to sell that film. Ooh, the FBI raid, we could use this in the film. And by the way, not coincidentally, that exact plot that the government came to steal the element 115 back was in Gene Huff's original Hollywood screenplay that Gene Huff and Bob Lazar tried to sell unsuccessfully to Hollywood for many, many years. And I'm sure that Jeremy Corbell, being given access to all things Bob Lazar, would have had a copy of that screenplay. And isn't that a little interesting that the screenplay to the Hollywood movie ending was exact to the documentary ending, right? A little too coincidence. But I did speak with the local sheriff where Bob Lazar's business was, the FBI agents, even one of the hazmat guys. I talked to the police from the local jurisdiction that the murder took place. All of them. By the way, we're talking some 6 or 7 on the record sources, all dispute 100% everything that George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and Bob Lazar tried to sell you in that documentary. None of that ever happened. Most of them didn't even know who Bob Lazar was. They didn't know about his flying saucer stories. They didn't know he was internet famous for working at Area 51. And by the way, they were none too happy that they were used and lied about as a plot device to sell a documentary full of lies. None of them were happy about it. And, you know, again, we've got on the record sources that all corroborate each other's story. There was no surveillance of Bob Lazar. There was no listening in on conversations. That was all an invention by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and Bob Lazar to sell that shitty documentary. And isn't it wonderful that they didn't give you all of this truth, right? They sold you a whole lot of lies, deception after deception after deception. Bob Lazar is a former government scientist. No, he's not. Prove he's a scientist. You can't. Prove he worked for the government. You can't. Lie after lie after lie after lie to sell this shit story. It's fake. And here's more proof that it's fake. 1 second. Let's just catch up to the live chat before we get into another section of reading here. And we're almost through our journey. Alf Walker says, I had a neg vet classified clearance on Australia on a task force. They interviewed my family, went through criminal records, social media accounts. No way Lazar is getting a Q clearance. Thank you, Alf Walker. And thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. I can add Alf Walker to the list of verifiable. We're going to have to verify you're telling the truth here. But yeah, we will do it. I trust you. We have good users here and good chat room participants. Thank you, Alf Walker. We can then add Alf Walker to the list of experts. We have a list of experts, Corbell, that say you're full of shit. We have a list of experts in security clearance that say you're full of shit, George Knapp. Why don't you address this on your shitty new podcast? Why don't you talk about the overwhelming evidence that Bob Lazar's story cannot be true? It's bad for business. It would be bad for business for them to do that. It would be extremely bad for business for them to acknowledge the reality of this situation, that Bob Lazar could not have gotten any security clearance, let alone top secret or Q clearance. Wouldn't happen. Would never, ever happen. And thank you, Alf Walker, for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. Thanks for helping us to praise the cash. And how do you like that, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp? You're getting paid to lie to people. Did you even consider for a moment that you could have gotten paid to tell people the truth about Bob Lazar? But I know what happened. They knew they'd make more lying. And that's sad.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you, Alf Walker, for your kindness, generosity, and your support of the show. We really appreciate you, and especially paying to chime in to become part of our presentation. Thank you very, very much. Is there any news articles on Bobby's pimping? I can drag some out for you. I'll put them in the Discord server. Yes, there is. And I have the video of him in court talking to the judge about his pimping and running that whorehouse. Yeah. Can I get an AMs? Amen, says tomfoolery. Yes, amen, right? Okay, so let's get back to this wonderful article from Signals Intelligence. Oh, 1 second. How did that work out? Oh, here we go. I had it in multiple tabs. All right. This makes sense. Okay. So on security clearances, Carol and Bob began working at Los Alamos National Lab as contract technicians after moving to Los Alamos in May 1982. Former Los Alamos National Laboratory employees confirmed that contractors were allowed to begin work at the lab in unclassified, non-sensitive areas before their background investigation was complete and security clearance granted. When determining suitability for a high-level security clearance, personal relationships and associations can play a crucial role. Marrying someone with a criminal record, a background of drug abuse, and ties to a notorious criminal organization such as the Hells Angels would likely cause serious concerns during a security clearance investigation. The government places a premium on judgment, character, and insusceptibility to influence or coercion, all of which can be called into question when an individual chooses to marry someone with a history of drug abuse and violent crime. She took part in a murder. Furthermore, any ties to criminal organizations such as Hells Angels would be seen as evidence of potential loyalty conflicts and could raise concerns about individuals' susceptibility to blackmail. It's uncertain whether the issues in this particular case would have disqualified Bob Lazar from receiving a security clearance. Ultimately, the agency seeking the clearance here, the Department of Energy, is charged with considering all the information and making a determination. Los Alamos National Laboratory has previously given an official statement that addresses the matter. Bob Lazar was affiliated with Los Alamos National Lab through his work as a subcontractor. He was never employed by the University of California. By the way, that subcontractor did not hire real scientists. They only hired low-level technicians, electronics techs. They never hired physicists. And we know that that subcontractor was Kirk Meyer. He was never an employee of the University of California, which held a management and operating contract for Los Alamos at the time of his affiliation. And there is no record that he held a security clearance at Los Alamos. So there we go. Bob Lazar claimed that he was a senior staff level physicist at Los Alamos. There's more proof there. So we have on the record statements. Remember, friends, we're not doing the trust me, dude school of research or proving a story is true like Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp do. George Knapp claims, I got all these sources that back up that Bob worked at Area 51. Spill them. Where are they? What are their names so I can interview them? Or Signals Intelligence, or Luis Caetano, or Jeremy Rise, alien scientist, can interview those people who back up Bob's story. George Knapp won't release the names. Do you know why? Because they don't exist. They're plot devices, just like the fake Area 51, just like the fake story about the raid on Bob's business being about Element 115 is a plot device. George Knapp won't release the names of anybody that backs up Bob Lazar's story. He claims he has all these sources, but he can't give them out. There's a reason for that. Everything that we have shown you tonight came from on the record, verifiable sources that any researcher can go after and verify is true and accurate and get the same answers. Bob Lazar never had a clearance at Los Alamos. That's more proof that he was never a scientist. Did you need more proof he was never a scientist at Los Alamos? He never had a security clearance. You could not and would not be a senior staff level physicist at a lab working on all kinds of secret projects like Los Alamos National Labs and not have a security clearance. We have on the record sourcing that says while working at Los Alamos, Bob Lazar never had a security clearance. We have on the record sources, Signals Intelligence interviewed former supervisors of Bob Lazar, all of which confirm he was never a scientist at Los Alamos National Lab. He was a low-level technician, the kind of guy who ran network cables for you or got you a new mouse or keyboard. If you spilled coffee on your keyboard in your lab, you called Bob and he'd bring you a new one. He was one step above the janitor at the lab. He was never a scientist. And these UFO profiteering whores, George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, have been lying to all of you. They give you only the parts of the story that will make you think Bob Lazar's story is true. They leave out all that we shared with you tonight. And by the way, if you enjoyed all of these on the record, real sources and data points that we had to share with you tonight, we didn't share them all. I don't have time. It would take me another 5 hours to share with you all of the overwhelming evidence that Bob Lazar's story is fake. It would take me hours and hours more to be able to share with you all of the proven, verifiable facts that we have on our side to show you that Bob Lazar made his story up. He faked it. We don't have time for all of that, but you can just search Bob Lazar. Go to our channel, our main channel, and while there, hit that little magnifying glass, search Bob Lazar or George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and you'll find a mountain. We have a mountain of evidence that George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell have been lying to you to sell a fake story. In George Knapp's case, for decades. In Jeremy Corbell's case, for years and years and years and years and years. And by the way, I just want to hammer home this point. This is why the illusion of these stories being true works, because they carefully craft the illusion of this being a true story for you by leaving out all of the things that we freely shared with you tonight. And by the way, most of the information that we shared with you tonight came from real, verifiable, on-the-record sources. Not anonymous sources, not trust me, dude. This is the way that you do real research. And this, my friends, is how you really get to the truth, with people that are willing to give their names and let you share their names because they're not bullshitting you. Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, all they have is anonymous sources and trust me, dude. And isn't it interesting that now they're on to new grifts? Hey, you two UFO profiteering clown whores have made millions of dollars selling this fake story. Why don't you debate me on whether Bob Lazar is telling the truth or not? Why don't you have me on your shitty new podcast, right? And by the way, I'll be respectful. I won't call you a profiteering whore. I will call you a, I'll have to come up with a nicer way to say UFO profiteering whore, right? I'll do it. I'll be respectful. But You guys have made millions of dollars selling this convicted pimp, clown, fake scientist as a government whistleblower. You have a right and a responsibility to address all of the information that you just conveniently left out of all of your selling and telling of this story over the years. Isn't it convenient? They just happen to leave all of this information out. And let's be clear, friends, I did not give you all the information we have. I don't have time to give it all to you. There is a mountain of evidence that these guys have been lying to everybody for years. There is a mountain of evidence that Bob Lazar is a complete and total work of fiction story. Shouldn't the guys that made the millions of dollars be forced to stand up and defend against this overwhelming mountain of evidence that they sold you a fake story? Shouldn't the guys that made the millions of dollars have to answer for all of these revelations? After all, it's George Knapp and Corbell who stood there and said he was a senior staff level physicist at Los Alamos National Labs. No, he wasn't, you clowns. Prove it. Prove it. He was never a scientist, you two idiot clowns. And listen, I think a lot of things about both those two clowns. But one thing I know is neither of those guys is stupid. Both of them did this, in my opinion, willfully, deliberately, and with deception and intention, has deceived all of us. And should they not have to answer for their sins? Of course they don't want to. They're on to the next fake story they're selling you with no evidence, anonymous sources, and half of the story, right? Do you think there's a reason we're not getting videos? We're getting still frames from videos? And who's giving Jeremy Corbell classified information? Bullshit. The news stories that those two clowns are selling you are just as fake as the story that George Knapp has been selling you since 1989. It's layer upon layer of lies, deception, and subterfuge designed to make him rich off of stupid people. Don't be one of them. Demand evidence. Demand that they address all of these problems with Bob Lazar's story. Demand that they tell the whole story, not half of it. And with that, we'll end our presentation, friends. We're going to take a, oh, look at that. 1 second. Let me just catch up with the live chat. We want to thank Alf Walker for becoming a YouTube member. By the way, if you become a YouTube member and you hit that join button, we give you a shout out and we thank you because we love and appreciate all of you. And we want to thank you, Alf Walker, for becoming a new member. You get that nice member badge and priority reply and a few other goodies. There's a member section video where you can look at all of our members only videos. You get a lot of benefits. Thank you, Alf Walker, and thanks for helping us to praise the cash. We appreciate you.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right. We thank you, and we thank all of you. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything else. We're going to take a very short break, but I want to remind you, I got to remind all of you, every time we take this, we take like a 2-minute break. It's just a few bumpers to tell you how you could support the show. I'm not selling you coffee or some other bullshit like forbidden knowledge every 5 minutes, right? We're not selling anything. Our model is PBS model. I grew up watching PBS. Every year, my dad would send them $150 for a coffee mug. I'm not even giving you coffee mugs. But we do have merchandise you can purchase, and our model is viewer supported, which means that if you like the content you produce, we produce, and you want to see more of it, so I can dedicate more time to this, I have other responsibilities to generate revenue, because apparently telling people the whole story in UFO land is career suicide. You can't make any money unless you do it like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell do and leave out half the story, right? So I have to do other things for money. If you'd like to see me do more shows and more of this content, you can become a viewer, or you can become a Patreon supporter, a member, or you could just throw one time. Hit that super chat button, throw a couple of bucks our way. If you're tired of these clowns that have nothing to sell you, if you're tired of clowns like Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp that have no truth to tell you, and only lies to sell you, then why don't you support the good content producers? And by the way, there's more than just me out here. There's other people telling the truth that aren't bought and paid for, like these UFO whores. And by the way, I don't know if you're aware, but we've got an epidemic. There's an epidemic around here of UFO profiteering whores. All right. And we got to do something about these UFO profiteering whores. This is too much. It's too much. We got Linda Moulton Howe selling 100% fake alien pictures. We got George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell selling a convicted pimp that ran a whorehouse whose wife murdered people as a top secret government scientist whistleblower. He's a fake scientist. We got, Corey Good and David Wilcock. David Wilcock's running around telling people to take baths in your own piss to get superpowers from the Archangel Michael. Corey Good's running around after telling people he's never been to space. He's going to give you some secret space updates. There is an epidemic of UFO profiteering whores, and that's the problem. And we are the solution, us who will not accept that any further. And if you found us, I am so glad that you did. Thank God you found us. Thank God you're here. Aren't you sick of these liars and scammers ruining this for all of us? I am. Come with me. Come with me if you want the truth. And Zane is here with a kind and generous $10, says, keep it up, brother. Well, we thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. And we'll give a big shout out to all you Patreon supporters, all you Twitch subscribers, all of you PayPal pledgers, super chatters, super sticker purchasers, super thanks people, and you people buying the merchandise, everybody supporting us. Thank you for helping us. Only by praising the cash can we continue this mission. Thank you all. We need to keep praising that cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Praise the cash. All right, so we are going to take a very quick break just to remind you that we're a viewer-supported show and how you can support us. I'm going to put my banner up and remind you that I got some more to share with you. The show is not over. We'll be right back after a very quick message about how you too can support the show. Stick around. You don't want to miss what comes next.
Truthseekers is a viewer-supported show. Wonderful people like you who enjoy this show send pledges in the form of super chats, super stickers, super thanks, PayPal, or Cash App. Instructions for how to help are in the description. You can also join our Patreon, and for as little as $1 a month, you can get extra content. Patreon supporters get a backstage pass, early access to all our production videos before they are distributed publicly, Stephen Campion's music, private writings, a monthly show journal, and more. You can also become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month. A YouTube membership includes all of the Patreon benefits, plus a special members badge, priority reply to video comments, and the live chat, plus a monthly members-only video. We thank you all, kind and generous benefactors, for supporting Truth Seekers. Thank you for your generosity and support. Thanks for being here. This is Truth Seekers with your host, Stephen Campion. Please rate, like, and comment on our videos or podcasts. If you are listening to an audio podcast, please rate us 5 stars to help us rise in the search rankings. If you are watching on YouTube, please like, comment and subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to an audio podcast, we love and appreciate you listeners, but you are missing the live tapings. All our shows are recorded live with video feed. We'd love you to come be a part of our live broadcasts and tapings for the podcast. Head on over to YouTube, click the search tool, the little magnifying glass, put Truthseekers, one word in the search bar, and hit enter. You'll see a strange and mysterious guy with sunglasses. That means you found the channel. Go there, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to receive up-to-date info on our YouTube channel. We welcome you to be a part of our live taping and our chat group during the live broadcasts. Seek the truth. Speak the truth. This is Truthseekers. Truthseekers.
Wow! The land of make-believe!
Okay, we are back. I'm sorry, I was looking for another bumper and not finding one because we were going to play this Circle Jerkers show. I got the shirt on and everything. I will find it. Yes, the UFO Circle Jerkers, for those unaware. By the way, it's not just Knapp and Corbell who are responsible for these lies that have been spread for years about this fake story. It's everybody who's ever interviewed them or Bob Lazar, who has not brought up all of this mountain of evidence that we have shown you tonight. These UFO circle jerkers, they do the Cosmic Con shuffle, they leave out half the story, and their whole purpose is making sure that you only get the part of the story that makes you believe it's true. It's very deceptive. It's deceptive editing. It's the lie by omission. It's the Cosmic Con shuffle. That's how they do it. And all of you UFO circle jerkers are now on the table because the secret is out. People are no longer willing to accept these fake stories with fake evidence, with fake whistleblowers. And by the way, what's the difference between Corey Goode and Bob Lazar? There's no difference. There's no maybe Bob Lazar is better at crafting a more believable story. You know, he's not fighting space aliens and time traveling, but his story is just as fake. And these two are fake whistleblowers. Both Corey Goode and Bob Lazar are fake whistleblowers. And you UFO circle jerkers are responsible for this.
Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic Con shuffle. Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic Con shuffle. Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic Con shuffle. Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic Con shuffle. Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic Con shuffle. Garbage pedal club, and I ain't in it. Cosmic Con shuffle, Cosmic
Yeah, it is a garbage peddlers club, and I ain't in it. I won't do the lie by omission to sell you a fake story. We try to do our best to give you all aspects of the story and let you make up your own mind. We appreciate that there are some people that appreciate that. So we're going to take comments and questions from the live chat. Yeah. Tomfoolery says Lazar and Stephen Greer are the same person. Time travel, man. Yeah, Bob Lazar does look like a younger Stephen Greer with hair, right? But they're not that far away in age, maybe 10 or 20 years away in age, right? Russell Brand interviewed Corbell recently, another one I couldn't bring myself to listen to. Yeah, we covered that here, and it was just filled with garbage and lies. Just filled with garbage and lies. And we heard from Dark Journalist at the beginning of this broadcast that Corbell is the clown. You know, they throw out the circus clown. It is really, really ridiculous that these guys, I'm just surprised that they're making millions of dollars lying to people. And there's almost no shame, right? You know, like a normal person, if caught selling 100% fake story, would have some shame, right? They'd be ashamed to show their face around for a while. They'd have to do some sort of mea culpa and apologize. None of these people apologize. It's just like, well, you know, you get something wrong. No, you intentionally, you deceptively edit it, deceptively, you know, manipulated the story in order to sell it. It's a garbage peddlers club. They do this on purpose. I will repeat what I said. I think a lot of things about Corbell and Knapp. And by the way, somewhere along the line, Knapp did some great work sometimes when he didn't choose to do the garbage peddlers club job. You know, it's just that he sort of figured out somewhere that fake stories with no evidence, if they sound great, they sell better than real stories with real evidence. So he went that route. And isn't it great that there's the omission? By the way, I want to thank Stephen Greenstreet. We played several clips he's responsible for those clips with the dogs. I love that. There was dogs smoking cigarettes, according to George Knapp. Or there was dogs just standing there against the tree, guys with dog heads. There was wolves. Jesus Christ. And we also used a clip from Stephen Greer excuse me, not Stephen Greer. Did I say Stephen Greer? Stephen Greenstreet. We used a clip of Stephen Greenstreet, the Knapp clips. He's got the whole collection of all of Knapp's public appearances. And boy, once in a while, he posts a great clip. And isn't it interesting that all those old UFO conference appearances of George Knapp are slowly melting and disappearing from the internet? There's a reason for that. He doesn't want you to see some of the bullshit he used to push. So we want to thank Stephen Greenstreet. Also, last night we played a clip of the Ross Coulthart promo that he put Gonzo flying around in. His clip of the Ross Coulthart promo was just funnier than the normal one. So we want to thank him. We're anxiously awaiting future episodes of The Basement Office now that he has turned to the dark side. That people call it the dark side. Listen, if we're on the dark side, telling people the truth and not lying to people, you know, the believer crowd, they're getting very upset. People like Greenstreet are turning on the whole narrative, right? I think Stephen Greenstreet was honest when he first got into it. He thought that there was a lot of evidence. And after a while, he figured out he was being lied to and manipulated. And this was all a narrative. Some would say a CIA narrative. And isn't it interesting that we have two huge problems here in the so-called UFO community? We have a CIA, an intelligence operative problem. Those are the guys putting out all the stories and the narratives. And then we have a UFO profiteering whore problem. There's an epidemic. I said it before, I'm going to keep saying it. There's an epidemic of UFO profiteering whores. And they've all figured out that the best way to make money is to just believer crowd it. Just keep, yeah, the aliens are here. Yeah, we got bodies. There's bodies. There's alien bodies, right? Yeah, we got, crash retrievals. We got that too. Yeah, it's all true. It's all true. Disclosure's coming any minute. The UFO profiteering whores have been pushing that narrative for as long as I've been involved in it, since at least the 80s. it never comes. Disclosure never comes. And these things all come in cycles. The back engineering, the first cycle of the back engineering was Len Stringfield with all anonymous sources, though I did enjoy his book, but it was all anonymous sources. So what can I do with that? Nothing, and Bob Lazar in 1989. Now it's all come back. Oh, UFO crash retrievals. Oh, they're back engineering. Yeah, they're back engineering those flying saucers, right? Except all the stories fall apart. And I, for one, am tired of it. And I think you are too if you're here. And by the way, I hear there's more people falling to the so-called dark side and going to start telling people the truth instead of just playing along and doing the UFO circle jerk. And good for those people. There are people that have dedicated their whole lives to telling people that disclosure's coming soon, right? There are people who are dedicating all their time and energy into trying to convince you that it's all true and it's all going to be confirmed soon. Stephen Bassett from Paradigm Research, another disclosure organization. It's sort of like, honestly, I think he just saw Stephen Greer making millions and decided to start his own disclosure organization. But he's saying that disclosure is going to come in the next couple of months. Yeah. Of course, he's been saying that for decades, I think, right? It never comes. Let's take some questions and comments. Questions and comments for me, as you veterans know, put them in all capital letters. Otherwise, you new people, I'm visually impaired, so it really does help me. If you want me to share your comment on the screen, put it in all capital letters. Bobby Broadway, well, first, I just wish they had revival tents for the UFO con jobs. Yeah. What is it going to take to get these grifters out of here and get back to research? I'm afraid they did too much damage to the field that's not fixable. Well, I think that the way to get rid of them is to vote with your pocketbook. Don't buy documentaries by proven liars, right? Like Stephen Greer in Third Phase of Fake. They're coming out with a new documentary. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. It's shit. Don't buy it. It's garbage. They've put out garbage for decades. You think they're suddenly going to have something good worth the $13 that the pay-per-view is going to cost or whatever it is? I don't know. I had to pay $13 for a shitty Third Phase documentary, but it's okay. I made it back in super chats making fun of how shitty their documentary was. And hey, Rich can suck a dick too from Goof On. You dumbass. You dumbass. You hitched your wagon to that shit show, right? Thinking that was the key to fame and fortune. Just, I'm going to work for Third Phase and they've got all these subscribers, right? Great. And he lied and lied and lied again. He's defending Third Phase Moon. He's defending Stephen Greer, right? Picked the wrong road, bro. Amy Collins is here. And by the way, thank you. Amy Collins has contributed to tonight's show with her excellent piece. And by the way, Amy, I do remember, I just want to apologize to you. I remember that you sent that to me and wanted me to like talk about it on the show or do it on the show. And I can't remember, but I think I was having issues, family issues at the time. My son was changing medications and he was having all these meltdowns. And I just want to be honest with you. I wanted to share that. Hey, we got to share it tonight. Better late than never. It was probably like a year or more ago that Amy sent me that excellent piece on how the S4 badge was faked. And thank you for that. And I apologize. But then I saw that you sent it to Louis Caetano, who did an excellent write-up of it, and thought, I don't need to do it now. But I thank you for your contribution tonight and to the truth, just your contribution. It's important. Do you think Knapp did mob reporting to report one crime family over another, like he was a tool for the mob, or was he really objective there? I don't know, because I don't know enough about, even though I spent a lot of time in Las Vegas, Amy Collins, and I worked at some places that I was sure was run by, let's just say, the family, right? There isn't just big, I don't even want to get into it, but I did work there for a time, and I did some work in Las Vegas, and I thought it was really shady. But as far as I know, all of Knapp's mob reporting stories and his stories about corruption in the local government were very well done investigative journalism pieces. Knapp has shown an incredible, unlike Corbell, I have a lot more respect for Knapp. Number one, George Knapp never blocked me, right? Either on Facebook or on Twitter. I think he's my friend on Facebook, which is interesting. Someday I'm going to, well, maybe I better stop calling him a UFO profiteering whore. I'm going to ask him to have a conversation about these things. And I think he and I can have an honest, open, probably get a little bit of fireworks conversation about all of these issues surrounding Bob Lazar. Because unlike Corbell, he's not really an intellectual weakling. I have a little bit more respect for him. I mean, he sells fake stories a lot, like Skinwalker Ranch. Isn't it interesting that he basically got caught lying in his own book? Oh, these stories are all based on all of this physical evidence. And then when asked, where's the physical evidence? Well, we don't have any. Why'd you put it in your book then? You know? But I think that Knapp, like a lot of people, starts out with good intentions, and then he gets to a point where the money rolls in, or he needs the money. So he starts, going fast and loose with the facts to have a new story to sell. And that's exactly, that's exactly what one of his problems is this whole new look. We're going to do a podcast now. Why don't you prove the old stories that you made millions of dollars on? Prove Skinwalker Ranch stories are true from your book, or prove Bob Lazar's story is true before you start introducing new disinformation, misinformation, and unverifiable so-called, quote, true stories, unquote. And to be very honest with you, Amy, I'm also very suspicious of who their sources are. I think it's the CIA feeding them all this shit. Why are they, especially Corbell? Corbell is a CIA bobo. He's a clown. They're using him just like they used Tom DeLonge. They want some narrative out there. They give this clown stuff. People aren't looking for Chinese drones. They're looking for aliens, thanks to Bobo the clown, Corbell, right? But thank you, Amy, for the question. Rich says, how can Knapp be on record disbelieving Lazar's education, yet believe the UFO physicist story? Yeah, I mean, it's a problem, and that's a better question for him to answer, but good luck. They have a very curated delusion bubble, I hear. In other words, Rich, if you go in their live chat and ask that question, they'll block you, or they'll mute you from the channel so that their stupid followers don't see you using logic, discernment, and critical thinking skills applied to their fake stories. They can't have that. We can't have people with critical thinking skills like Rich ES here asking good questions in our live chat. Delete that guy. That's what they do. They all live in a delusion bubble, right? How many people has Knapp blocked for asking real and valid questions? He's an intellectual coward and a weakling. He cannot withstand debate. He knows the story falls apart under the least little bit of critical thinking or scrutiny, right? Bobby Broadway is here, longtime show supporter, and says, I think they have no idea, make it all up, but aliens are here and could be breakaway humans, I guess. Yeah, could be. Operation Shutdown. Thank you for being a member, says the Garbage Peddlers. Cosmic Con Shuffle song will be stuck in my head now. Well, you can thank the wonderful Simon Fly. By the way, we thank him for his wonderful music videos. We opened the show with his newest one. I love that Knapp in that new music video of his going, we have no evidence. We have no evidence. We have no evidence, over and over again. You know why? Because it's true. They have no evidence, right? Great. And isn't it interesting that Corbell, look, this is funny. He releases this image, which, by the way, I've decided I'm taking a pass on that image because we got some interesting. Yeah, I was just saying I'm going to take a pass on this image of this stupid missile. But let's get into it because we have Scott Brown on the case already, and he's got some interesting things to share. Scott Brown says, I'm just not buying that this is a UFO. Common sense says in a war zone, it's most likely something familiar to a war zone. Corbell screenshot, Tomahawk missile, or a cruise missile. Yeah, look at that. I think that Corbell and Knapp are desperate. I think they're desperate for material for their new podcast, and they're going with anything, even showing people something as stupid as a missile or a rocket over a known war zone, claiming that it's not, right? And I love some of the Twitter threads so far. They clearly said it's not a rocket. Pay attention. Well, just because they said it's not a rocket or a missile doesn't mean it isn't a rocket or a missile. They've been wrong how many times before, right? They were certainly wrong about their convicted pimp fake physicist whistleblower, right? They were wrong about the pyramid UFOs. They were wrong about the Batman balloon shit, right? They've been wrong a lot. So just because they say it's not a rocket or a missile, sorry, I don't trust grifters. Prove it. Prove it's not a missile. We'll wait. And I believe that there's a reason they didn't give us the video, because I think that the video, the frames of the video, which they chose not to release, will prove that this isn't normal, ordinary, earthly, military. I'm just going to call it a military asset for now. And, you know, can we agree that maybe Occam's razor is a good idea? Like, let's not go straight to space aliens with this, but that's what they do. Couldn't be a missile. Prove it. Prove it, Corbell, you liar, you CIA psyop clown bobo. Prove it. But they won't. But anyway, Scott Brown seems to think that this is definitely could be a Tomahawk missile or a cruise missile. I tend to agree. And by the way, I've said I'm going to sit that out. We're just going to wait, and somebody will prove what it is soon. I know Mick West is on it. He's got a thread at Metabunk if you're interested. Great thread. People have already figured out the altitude, the velocity. Those guys are amazing. How anybody could trash Mick West, I'll never understand it, right? Those guys are on the case. Somebody's going to figure out what it is, right? And then there'll be new excuses for why they released garbage. And did you know, this is also great. We're gonna share something that I put on my Twitter, because essentially, you remember the Boca, the pyramid fake UFOs that Corbell released? You remember that, right? Well, according to Jeremy Corbell at AlienCon, Stephen Greenstreet got to ask him a question, right? And isn't it interesting that Corbell essentially just ignores what was said? That's not Boca. He's like, well, it's your opinion, man, right? Yeah, let's share this. Let's include this in tonight's presentation. And thanks to Stephen Greenstreet for standing up and asking real questions like a real journalist. Imagine that. And those guys can't handle it. They lost their shit. And the security guard was yelling at Stephen Greenstreet, you only get one question. You only get one question. You know why? Because they cued the security guard, get this guy out of here. We can't have him asking real questions, making us look like garbage peddlers that we are. All right, Greenstreet. Stephen Greenstreet with the New York Post. I have a few questions for you. George is laughing. I have a few questions for you, but I'll ask just one that I'm personally curious about your insight. So the briefing slides that Jay Stratton produced with the green triangles, those have been demonstrated pretty clearly to be out of focus stars. Jeremy interrupts. Hold on. You can ask a question, but let's make sure, because you're holding a microphone right now. Your opinion publicly is that those have been demonstrated to be out of focus stars. That's your opinion. Let's just make sure we get that straight. So now continue your question. Corbell is denying the debunk that those pyramid UFOs were out of focus stars or bokeh effect. Greenstreet, okay. Even Travis Taylor has come out and said that he believes that these are out of focus stars. My question, why so much restraint in the star explanation? Why do you, what do you have that makes you say, no, the stars explanation doesn't make sense, and something like flying pyramids makes more sense than out of focus stars? Now, it's important to note that this is a public conference where he's asking these questions, and these two clowns, Knapp and Corbell, are sitting up on a panel. Knapp, you'll hear it this afternoon from Jay Stratton. There's a lot more information that was available behind the scenes than was made public. This is all excuses. And I know that Mr. Bray, during the public hearing, showed a video of something that was Boca on the East Coast and decided that proved that what was seen on the West Coast was the same thing. They looked identical. There's a rangefinder. They shot that off the deck of that ship, whatever. That object was the closest. It was 700 feet off the deck of the ship. If it had been Boca, as it was explained to me by the guys who studied it and prepared the report, 3 PhDs, optical physicists, name them, analyzed the stuff. They figured out that if Boca was the explanation, it would be the stars that look like pyramids, not the object that was closest to the ship. So we get excuses. But as you know, I'm not an expert on that stuff. Corbell, it sounds like, it's funny the way you premise things before asking the question. All the premises up to that question are really interesting to me. So the thing is, you're saying that I have an opinion on something. Well, you clearly have not been listening to anything that I've said since we released those images. He said it were pyramid spaceships, Corbell. The clown Corbell said they were pyramid-shaped spaceships. They were proven to be bokeh effect through a lens, which I think might be true, but we could talk about it. You said, and here, Green Street gets them. You said they were pyramids just yesterday. Corbell, I think what we should do is have people talk for themselves. So I think Travis Taylor should talk for himself. I think Jay Stratton should talk for himself. But when you ask somebody, why do you have an opinion, but your premise with all that? Yeah, he keeps on coming back to, your premise is that they're bokeh. Your premise is that they're not pyramid spaceships. Your premise. It's verifiable fact, Corbell, you clown. Those were not pyramid-shaped spaceships, you asshole. The reason I have an opinion is because maybe I've spent a lot of time understanding it on a deeper level. Excuses. And maybe, just maybe, that's not an isolated thing. And just maybe, that's part of a much bigger thing that occurred. But I think that the distinguishing thing of, if these are, in Jay's slide, triangles from an angle of observation, yet pyramid shape in other documents, let's hear what Jay has to say. Knapp, tell you what, this afternoon I'm going to be talking to Jay and Travis, and I asked them about it, and I'm happy to expand on that. Green Street, thank you, Jeremy. So do you believe that those are not stars in that slide, but flying pyramids? You personally believe that? Alien Con Security, you only get one question. Corbell, with a snarky ass comment. So you want some quote you could take out of context and put in a magazine, or what? Green Street, I was just curious what you thought. Alien Con Security, again, you only get one question, Corbell. So basically, here's the deal. If you want to know what I think, you should just go and look at everything I've ever said about it. He said they were pyramid spaceships. This clown, Bobo the clown, Corbell asshole, said they were pyramid spaceships. Stephen Greenstreet correctly points out, even at the Alien Con conference, he was saying they were pyramids. So he's still going with they were spaceships, even though it's been completely proven that they were not. I am convinced that what you're seeing there, that there is a shape to it that is representative of what you're seeing. But the thing is, let's say I'm wrong. Right. Let's find out. Let's go deeper. Let's get more information on this. Because again, I'm not hanging my hat on a single image produced by our military. It was a video, not an image. That's their job. What I do is put it out and report what they reported. Yeah. So the military told Corbell, according to him, that they were pyramid-shaped spaceships. Sure. Can you name your military sources, Corbell, that told you they were pyramid-shaped spaceships, you asshole liar? I just put it out and report what they reported. Nobody in the military told him these are pyramid-shaped spaceships. He came up with that to sell this fake story. Another fake story. How many fake stories has Corbell sold? Well, lots of them. But I don't think this is the time or space to be dealing with it with this much energy. Yeah, in other words, you're ruining the Alien Con, Stephen Greenstreet. You, Stephen Greenstreet, are at Alien Con, and you're ruining our con. I just told people they were pyramid spaceships. Shut up. Shut up. You're ruining the con, Stephen Greenstreet. Knapp. And I think we reported it based on what they said. Great. Then name the sources who said they were pyramid spaceships. You liars. You didn't report it based on what people told you. You got that video leaked to you and you made up a story about pyramid spaceships to sell the story, you assholes. So what we're saying is that they said from the angle of observation that it appeared to be pyramids. Green Street says, thank you, guys. Interesting. Interesting. All right, and we have something interesting to share. Let me see. Is there any say? Oh, I'll share it on another show, Mr. Ian, because if that gets me a copyright claim, I'm going to be pissed off. We made it this far without one of those. And let me catch up with the live chat. So there you have it. Those two clowns were at something called Alien Con. At least it's truth in advertising. They were conning people about aliens at Alien Con. And you people, stop sending me the stupid emails. I know it's supposed to mean convention, but they call it Alien Con. And it's filled with people that are alien con artists. So I think that shit's funny. I'm allowed to think that shit's funny. Alien Con, filled with a bunch of alien con artists making $1 million, selling fake stories like George Knapp and Corbell and Travis Taylor and the Skinwalker gang. Alien Con. DJ D's, thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. And thank you for helping us to praise the cash. We appreciate your kindness, your generosity, and support. Praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
All right, we're trying to get caught up here. We see Banana with a $1.49 super sticker as well. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and your support of the show. It is much, much appreciated. Comments or questions for me, please put them in all capital letters. I apologize if you have to put your question in twice and I missed it a little while back. I am all caught up to the current live chat. But thank you, Banana, for your kindness, generosity, and support and helping us praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Praise the cash, friends. We had a good night of praising the cash, good night of telling people the truth instead of lying to people. Imagine that. Wreaking Havoc thinks that Linda Moulton Howe sacrificed those cows. Maybe she took an axe to them just to sell a story. Wreaking Havoc, like she murdered them with an axe. I can't remember, but I heard somebody say that. All right. Linda Moulton Howe was a hottie back in the 40s. Yeah, she was a beauty queen, DJ D's. She was a literal beauty queen, right? Deborah Jones Loveless is here, and thank you for being a member. Says, I haven't seen that one, but I saw a commercial about something she's in recently. I'm sure I'll see it at some point. No, that's interesting. Patty says Linda's fans always tell her how great she looks. It's plastic surgery. Yeah, she is like 90 almost. Operation Shutdown says, I feel like after Corbell babbles, they should play the Jimmy Church clip for the masses. Yeah, I agree with you. Maria Rose correctly pointing out Corbell loves the attention, no substance, all theatrics. I agree. And it's a shame. Obviously, look, I'm an artist, Maria Rose. I'm not going to tell you that he's not a talented visual artist, right? A good video editor, good artist, right? I'm an artist. I can respect that about him. What I don't respect is him lying to people for money. I don't respect that one bit, and this constant, like he's a celebrity now. He worked for his rich daddy running the condos, right? Like if your toilet, right? Like Maria Rose, this is going to be kind of gross, but we're going there. Like Maria Rose, before he was Mr. UFO expert, he ran his daddy's condos, right? So like if I came over to your condo and you lived in Jeremy Corbell's daddy's condo building and I took a big shit, I mean just a big, like a honking shit, like, and I got the toilet stuck, it would be Jeremy Corbell to come over to unstick my shit from the toilet. That's what he was before he was a UFO expert. Great. I think that's great. And his parents are loaded. He was a poor little rich kid, right? That never really worked a real job. Near as I can tell, he ran a yoga studio. Then he ran a fake jujitsu school that he just made up called Quantum Jujitsu. Then I think he was going to be a fighter, but he got injured or something, he claims, right? I would love to see that dude really do an MMA fight, right? I would love to see that. Yes. All right, we'll take a few more comments and questions. Oh, we have Catch, Clean, and Cook. Catch, Clean, Cook. Is that about fishing? I do that at the cabin. I catch fish, I clean them, then I cook them. We have fish fries. It's wonderful. But thank you for your kindness with a kind and generous $13.99 Canadian super sticker. We appreciate your kindness, generosity, and support. Thank you and welcome. You are most welcome here. Thank you for your support. And thanks for helping us. Praise to Cash, Catch, Clean, Cook.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your generosity. Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you for your kindness. Much, much appreciated. Did I miss one? I don't think so. It's still showing me one at the top here. No, that's Bananas $1.49. We got that one. Okay, I think we're all caught up. So questions or comments for me, please put them in all capital letters. Yeah, Bobby Broadway. The Quantum was after he saw New Age. What the bleep do we know movie, I bet. I agree. You just put quantum in front of it. It's quantum jujitsu. It's better than regular jujitsu because it's got quantums in it. Yeah, no shame in that. Yeah, but come on. From some rich kid that worked for his daddy and never had a real job or accomplished anything real in his life to sucking Knapp's balls and calling him a mentor to get, climb the ladder of the UFO dorkdom. It's ridiculous, right? And, just to be clear, not that I'm jealous. Am I jealous of the money? Sure. But I won't lie to people. This dude has to wake up every day and go, I have to lie to people every day to make this money, And it was like, I'll come back to your question, tomfoolery. Or no, we'll do that now. She probably had to learn how to fake breath like vamps on Twilight. I think we're still talking about Linda Moulton Hale. People are saying she looks like a corpse. That's not nice. She's an old lady. Let's not attack anybody's appearance, right? Fish fry sounds good right now. We could do that when you come to the cabin. Wreaking Havoc's coming to the cabin. He's building me a fireplace at the new place. At least I think he is. We'll try to figure it out, right? Yeah. But I wanted to mention, about being jealous of people with money. I'm human. I could be envious, but I have never been jealous or envious of anybody who got money through nefarious means. I grew up on the mean streets of Philadelphia in a pretty bad neighborhood. And there was lots of people growing up that would be braggarts because they had a lot of money or they got a new car. I don't know why, but I remember everybody wanted a Mustang for a while. And there were some local criminals in my neighborhood. My neighborhood was filled with criminals. Half the people there were criminals of one sort or another. But some of them were good people, even though they were thieves, right? And my mom's family were Irish. They were thieves. My mom's brothers were getting arrested for robbing boxcars full of cigarettes and liquor when I was growing up. Or then for some reason, I don't know how they even thought this would work, but they started stealing motorcycles and painting them and reselling them. And anyway, there was a lot of criminals in my neighborhood, including some of my own family members. So I can't, be too down on criminals, but people sometimes got to do what they got to do to survive. Anyway, there were people in my neighborhood growing up that would brag because they had a lot of money, or they would brag because they had a car or a motorcycle, or, I don't care, nice sneakers, anything they were bragging about. If if they got those things because they stole or sold drugs or pimped girls, I was never envious or jealous. I was never impressed. I was more impressed with the guy who got out of the neighborhood and went to college and did well for himself and got a good job or something, that did things the right way. I'm not jealous of people who make their money through crime. And let's be very clear. It's a form of consumer fraud what some of these clowns in the UFO field do, because they are selling you a quote true story. And in many cases, they know it's not true, or they should know it's not true, or they only give you half the story. I feel like it's a form of consumer fraud. And it's no better than, a televangelist selling you miracle water or any of these consumer fraud scams. It's a form of scam. So, no, I'm not jealous of somebody that's made millions of dollars scamming people and lying to people. I have been envious of self-made men who got there through hard work, perseverance, or maybe a good idea, an invention. They started a company. That I'm envious of, sure. If they made money the honest, it's twice as hard making money the honest way. If you just throw all your morals and your ethics and your morality in the trash and say, I'm getting rich no matter what it takes or who I have to hurt or fuck over to get there. It's a lot easier to get rich like that, right? And Corbell, and to a lesser extent Knapp, they've gotten rich selling lies to people. So I'm not envious of their fame or money, because you cheated to do it. You cheated, right? And someday we're all going to have to answer to our maker. And I can't wait to see Corbell with his beard and shit, standing in front of God one day, and God's going to say, I gave you a tremendous amount of artistic talent and intellect and drive and passion. What did you do with it? And Corbell's going to say, I sold UFO and alien stories to stupid people and lied to everyone for half my life. You think that your maker would be happy with how you used your gifts, Corbell, that you were given? These are God-given. Being artistic is a God-given talent. And those things should be used to the glory of humanity and God, in my opinion. Using them to artistically, manipulate people into believing a fake story is true, it doesn't do anything for, and may God have mercy on your soul. David Bucky says, yeah, it doesn't make him an expert researcher at all. Wreaking Havoc's going to build a masterpiece of a fireplace. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll tell you what, Wreaking Havoc, I'm going to be the mule. You know what I mean? Like, there's stones everywhere, all around the property, all around the surrounding forests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you 3 piles, small, medium, and large, of natural stones. And then while you're there building the fireplace, I'll mix up all the cement. We're not going to have power tools. We're going to have to hand mix like a couple 1,000 pounds of cement. I'll do it. And you just build that fireplace. We'll be okay. Luna Sparkles is mentioning the Freemasons. Uh-oh. It's a conspiracy. Corbell is a B-rated filmmaker and doesn't have a clue about UFOs. Yeah, I've never been impressed with his filmmaking abilities. The one thing I'll say is he has better cameras than I do. Okay, I'll give you that. You got better cameras than me, but he's not a better editor or filmmaker than me. He's just adequate. I know he was an artist for a time. I don't know. Amy Collins, that's why he tried to learn jiu-jitsu, for the little old lady that could come out screaming, you increased it to $1,300. Oh, no. Linda attacked a guy. Linda attacked a guy in a live event. The guy called her out for using an alien picture from a game. There was talk she tried to pull out a gun. Are you kidding me? Oh, we're going to need to see a video of that. If that's true. I don't think that's true. Did you catch Corbell being interviewed by Kim Iverson? No, I did not. But I'm going to write that down. Kim Iverson. We're going to look that up. We might do a show on it. If he lies a lot, I love the interviews. And listen, by the way, I just want to thank you, Dawn Richardson. Thank you for your wonderful question. I'll check into that. But I just want to let people know that the time that there's knobs that these grifters have. They got a grift knob, right? And when they got new shit to sell, they got to turn that grift knob all the way up. And right now, there's a few of these grifters out there cranking the grift knob to maximum, trying to push it past maximum because they've got new shit to sell. And when they turn up that grift knob because they've got something new to sell, that's when they lie the most. You'll catch them. Stephen Greer just did that ridiculous interview with Sean Ryan, lying for 2 hours straight because he needs money. He needs to turn up that grift knob. These clowns, Corbell and Knapp, are out here turning up that grift knob because they got to sell that podcast. They need money. And that's where they take risks and lie the most. So we've got a bunch of profiteering whores out there turning up the grift knob to full on maximum. Turn it up to 11, right? Taxpayers said they never messed with my Stang. I had a trunk monkey. Is that from Speed Racer? Remember? The monkey and the kid would always go in Speed Racer's trunk. He had a trunk monkey. I've heard that term before. Horsey is here and says Warminster in the house. I don't know if you mean Warminster, Pennsylvania. That's where I live. But if you do, yeah, maybe you're one of my neighbors, right? I got to meet a neighbor recently that watches the show, and that was a weird and surreal experience because I've never been recognized out on the street from Truthseekers before. And they came up to me and said, "You're Steve Cambion, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And they go, "I watch your show sometimes. I like conspiracies and stuff." And I was just floored. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." But it's never happened before. It'll probably never happen again. Fake it till you make it. Billy's catch cry. Yeah, Amy Collins. He had all the advantages. He could have gone to any school he wanted it. Probably. UFO circle jerkers take advantage of people wanting to believe, says Mark Freeborn. I believe. Mario Heat is here. I mean, anyone could show that video to a military person or friend, and that person can say, "Yo, that looks like a pyramid." That doesn't confirm anything. I agree. And thanks. So good to see you here, Mario Heat. Old school friend of the show. Good to see you. Mario Heat went to work on a secret mission, and he's been gone for a long time, but I think maybe he's back, but he doesn't have a lot of time, so he's not here much. So welcome back, Mario Heat. Great to see you out there. King of Hugo Mundo is here, longtime show supporter. Says Mario, of someone in the military said so-called secrets to a UFO researcher, he would be charged with a crime and in jail, maybe more. I agree. That's another of these false. Corbell is out there lying. Nobody's sending him classified information. He's full of shit, right? And there's no investigations into people leaking classified information from Navy ships into Corbell. We showed those documents. Ron from Cosmic Neighbors filed FOIA requests. There's no investigations into people leaking information to Jeremy Corbell. That alone tells you that his information is worthless. The good stuff would be classified, and if somebody leaked it to him, there would be investigations to find out who did that. New UFO social media accounts on Twitter seems to have exploded, in my opinion, in the years following the Navy video releases. You're absolutely right. And Victor, we talked about here how there was an army of Twitter trolls that would attack anybody that even questioned TTSA, and then TTSA fell away, and then it was Elizondo. If you questioned Elizondo, you'd have 10, 20 accounts telling you how wrong you are constantly. And that seems to have fallen away. They're on to the next disclosure hero, right? All right. Stephanie in the Willows is here and says, well, the bigger you get, the more attention you'll get outside. It doesn't happen Happens occasionally. I know in Philadelphia we have a bunch of listeners, some of my old friends and things like that, but I didn't expect it around here. I like crop circle jerkers. Yeah. Maximize the grip knob. Yeah, we're going to need a shirt. Turn that grip knob to maximum, right? I need money. Maybe I got to turn. We're going to have to. We'll have a truth knob, though, taxpayer. We're not going to have a grip knob, right? There's a difference between military intel and your veteran friend saying that could be a pyramid. Yeah, but David, don't you notice that they didn't name the source? They never do. It's always trust me, dude, right? I think Trank is contaminated in some way deliberately. I never heard anything like it with ketamine users. So, yeah, I heard about that. That's a new big drug out there, right? I listen to these streams for a reason, whatever that is. Thank you, Luna Sparkles. We're glad. We're glad you're here. You are most welcome. Elizondo is also a fraud, no different from Lazar. Yeah, we've covered him extensively. I think he's on the CIA payroll myself. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. Tom Fuller, yes, turn that grip knob to 11 like on a Marshall amp. Absolutely. Absolutely, right? Jesus G is here. Jesus J is here and says, been bringing truth seekers lately. Good. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So we have done our due diligence for today. We are going to bounce on out of here, but I'm coming back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we've got a friend of the show, Ryder Lee, who you may know from the Raised by Giants podcast. He's been digging into all these super soldiers and secret space guys, and we're going to have a fun show tomorrow night, just laughing at the ridiculousness of these people with superpowers and secret space people and all of that stuff. And that is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be here, and I hope you'll be here with me. It's not really going to be an interview. It's more going to be a fun conversation between two show hosts who've been looking into similar grifters. And I thought that we could both benefit from having a talk like that. I did his show previously, so I guess he owed me one, and we need guests. By the way, if you know some good guests or authors, researchers, filmmakers, please do send them my way. Just have them email me at truthseekershow@gmail.com and put in the subject line guest. I know that people have been asking me to do more interviews lately. To be honest with you, I just feel more comfortable doing the solo shows more because sometimes guests reschedule or they can't do it or they got to move the time and various things. But we're going to try to do more interviews. So potential guests, email me at truthseekershow@gmail.com. We're always looking for new guests, new, interesting, and controversial people. Charles is here and says, UFO Skywatcher for 12 years, filmmaker and photographer. Pyramid video is a joke and classic out of focus plane and stars. I agree with you 100%, but isn't it interesting that at Alien Con, while they were trying to con people that those were pyramid spaceships, they didn't want to admit that. Like, you can't even admit that one was fake. That's how delusional these people are. They live in a delusional bubble, right? Stephanie wants a sweater, a Truth Seeker sweater for a cat. That would be cool. We'll work on that. Lou Elizondo was counterintelligence official under Mattis in Afghanistan. I'm aware of this, and we have covered his intelligence ties extensively here. See our previous shows on Elizondo, Mark Freeburn. Not a fan of his at all. Scott Hernandez says, amazing how you always drum up these breaking news. Well, I thought it was breaking news to anybody interested in the Bob Lazar story that his first wife turns out to be a convicted murderer who, was either a member of or an associate of the Hells Angels and had previous drug arrests and was a lifetime abuser of methamphetamines, because that means he could never have gotten a security clearance, in my opinion, and the opinion of many people I have asked. Yeah. And B. Baker is reminding everybody of the Truthseekers Discord. Yeah. If you like chatting, we have a 24/7 chat, not just when the show is live. Also, a reminder, generally people believe that you can only throw money at us when the show is live. That's not true. Now, PayPal has the super thanks. There's a thanks button if you're on the replay queue. Crew, hit that thanks button. And we want to thank for a kind and generous $10 PayPal pledge. We want to thank Mike, who says can't watch the show tonight. $10 fist bump for mentions of BBSs and FidoNet. Those were great times, Mike. I ran a BBS. I loved it. I loved running a BBS. My dad lost his goddamn mind, Mike. I started off with, I think 2 phone lines, and then I went to 4 phone lines, and eventually I got to 12 phone lines in my bedroom, and I was a kid. I mean, I was like, I don't know, I guess the BBS started when I was like 13 and went until I was like 16. So, but anyway, one time I forgot to ATA command the modems to turn the speakers off. That's something that I would usually do. And they were all squealing all night, and I was dead asleep, and my dad was like losing his shit because there was 12 modems squawking on and off for like an hour before he came and woke me up. And my father had interesting methods of punishment when I was growing up. He would turn the breaker to my bedroom off if I was being punished so that I couldn't use computers. And that worked. I would do anything just to keep the power on. I even once got so pissed off at my dad because he told me I couldn't have power for a month that I drilled a hole into my brother's bedroom and ran an extension cord. And then my dad found that, and I was in more trouble. Yeah, I once had this whole bedroom full of like computers, broken computers, modems, and people from all over the world were calling into my computer system. It was a fascinating experience and got me ready. I was doing online chatting before anybody knew you could do it. And modeming, we used to call it modeming, right? Dialing in. We would dial into other computer systems, right? What? 12 lines in one house. That's crazy. I remember someone would lift the phone up and crash my AOL. Yeah. Remember that? Running BBSs. From running BBSs to busting BSers, yeah. Is someday, maybe someday we could talk about briefings and stuff, Cambian, says Mario Heat, who is verifiably really undergoing some kind of secret training and clearances and government stuff that he can't talk about. Because Mario Heat's a secret agent now, right? Didn't the Hells Angels have intel connections? Well, I'm sure the CIA and other groups like the FBI were watching them, but I don't know about that. The days before mods and censorship. Yes. Oh, I forgot. So we want to thank Mike for his kind and generous $10 PayPal pledge. By the way, if you're going to send a big pledge, that's the way to do it. PayPal takes much less of the money. And we appreciate you people that are using PayPal. Some people just prefer to do that, so we keep more of it. But thank you, Mike. And thanks to everybody tonight. You guys made it rain money up in here. And we were praising the cash through this whole thing, all 3 hours. Thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support, all of you. Praise the cash. I've ordered my son a Praise the Cash shirt, and we're going to be doing pretty well. We're going to make some new bumpers with him in the Praise the Cash shirt. Scott says, I hated DOS back then, but I appreciate it now. I miss command line. That's why I like Linux, because I could do anything in Linux with the command line. Anything I want. I can shut the computer down. I can start it up. I can make folders. I can copy files. I can schedule programs to start and stop, all from the command line. This Windows crap, right? Steven dials his modem. Greer dials the grip knob to 11. Yeah, that's what's going on. Earliest I remember was Windows 95. Yeah, there was shittier stuff even before that. You should have seen it. But I started, the first computer I had that had a graphic interface was an Amiga 1000, a used one. And when everybody was buying PCs and trying to run Windows 3.1, the first real Windows, I had already been running an Amiga for a year, and I hated Windows. I said, I'm never going to PC and Windows. But eventually, Amiga died, and I had a cave. And Amigas were crazy expensive, too. So that probably didn't help the situation. And eventually, because of Sound Blaster 16, I had to switch because I was making music on my Amigas, and Amigas only had 4 8-bit channels. And with a Sound Blaster 16, I could have 32 16-bit channels and make much better songs and better sounding songs. So I had to switch eventually. But luckily, the DOS tracker that I used, which was called Fast Tracker 2, was a lot like the Amiga tracker that I used with the 4 channels, except it had 32 channels, and they were 16-bit CD quality sound. The computer sucked for everything but audio, but I had to switch. So we're going to bounce on out of here, and we will be back tomorrow night at 9. Yeah, Amiga GUI did look better than early Windows, for sure, and it worked. And it really did multitask well. Windows did not multitask. It multitasked like a pig. It was terrible. But that's because of the custom chips in the Amiga. So the Amiga would offset the video and the sound to other chips, and the processor was free to multitask. On a PC, the processor had to do everything, and it worked like crap. The early days of computing. I miss those days sometimes. I still have a bunch of retro computers in my garage. Maybe someday I'll drag them all out and we'll have a retro computer night and call some bulletin board systems, right? Yeah, those were fun days, but I don't miss them, right? Do you think Eric Weinstein has joined the Circle Jerkers? No, I think he's ratting them out right now. They played him. Weinstein looks like he's calling them out. Like, where you people are saying that these things defy the laws of physics, but show me a physicist that says that. They can't, because it never happened, right? But it is what it is. I'm glad that he's woken up and is telling the truth and basically saying there's not much to this. He's asking for data. They won't give it to him, right? They're saying that the stuff the public sees is downsampled. We'll set you up and show you the good stuff, but they never show him the good stuff because it likely doesn't exist. They're just playing him. I'm glad he's waking up, for one. So that's all we got for you. I am going to bounce on out of here. And we'll be back tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time with my friend Ryder Lee from the Raised by Giants podcast. We're going to be talking about the ridiculousness of super soldiers and the secret space program wackadoos. And if you just want to have a good time and laugh, tomorrow night's the night to join in. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. I want to thank you, kind and generous benefactors, you Patreon supporters, you channel members, you Twitch subscribers, you PayPal pledgers, you super chatters, super sticker purchasers, and super thanks people, and you people buying the shirts. You could be a UFO circle jerker too. By the way, I'm getting Jeremy Corbell's address. I'm going to send him one of these UFO circle jerker shirts because he is one of the kings of the UFO circle jerkers, right? Yeah. I'm glad that you could all be here tonight where we could, shed some of those layers of deception for you. If you're new to the show, please do subscribe. And our call to action. If you enjoyed tonight's show, I'm going to ask you for a favor. Please watch one more, because apparently I've been told by a YouTube algorithm expert that if you come and watch a show and then you come back and watch another video of ours, the YouTube algorithm turns up the knob and they say, this guy must make good content because people are returning to get more. And then they raise us in the search engines. They raise us in the recommendations. More people see us. More people hear about us. More people subscribe. And it grows our channel, which is certainly good for our mission and our cause. So watch one more. Maybe not tonight, maybe tomorrow while you're at work, maybe while you're driving someplace. And I encourage you to use that YouTube, that little search bar from our main channel. So you can look up a certain person like Travis Walton or Corey Good or David Wilcock or Lou Elizondo or Travis Taylor or Gary Nolan or any of these clowns, UFO advocates, disclosure heroes. And if you use that search bar, you'll find something that you'll probably want to hear about or hear us discuss or investigate. There's a lot of material here. We've got hundreds and hundreds of videos. I'm sure you'll find one you like. And it would really help our show and our channel if you watch one more. So please do that. And if you aren't new to the show and you haven't already, please do like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos on your social media, because then the AI algorithm loves us, right? And every day I say my prayer to the AI algorithm. AI algorithm, please find favor in our show. Help us find more subscribers and viewers and rise us in the search engines. Add us to more people's feeds and recommend us more so more people find us, and we'll keep making good quality content per your specifications and community guidelines and all of your wishes. In Google's name we pray. Amen. My life is in the hands of an AI algorithm, but it is an AI algorithm that is influenceable, which means if you watch one more, if you like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos, the algorithm likes us more and helps us more. So you can help us have the algorithm help us. Does that make sense? Anyway, we could use your help. And I sincerely appreciate everybody that I see sharing or retweeting. And also follow me on Twitter at Stephen Cambion. And also, we have a website where you can get all our latest audio podcast version and all of our latest videos, all from one site, and that is truthseekershow@gmail.com. Again, that's my email address. The website address is truthseekershow.com. Truthseeker, one truthseeker, then the word show, one word, truthseekershow.com. And from there, you can sign up for our mailing list, so we'll always stay in contact. Lots of censorship going on. We're going to have a mailing list soon. truthseekershow.com. Sign up for notifications. You'll hear about new episodes. And also, it's a great place to go. It works on phones, tablets, smart TVs, desktop computers. It works on any device. So if you need something to listen to, something to watch, truthseekershow.com. All of our content is there. Oh, and we thank Turtle Woman 1. Late entry, but thank you. Turtle Woman 1 just became a YouTube member. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support of the show. Thanks for helping us to praise the cash. You now have access. You have unlocked all the benefits. You get a member's badge. You get access to all our members-only videos. Congratulations, Turtle Woman 1, and thank you for your kindness and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
We had a great night of praising the cash. Thanks to all. We had a couple of people became members tonight. Thank you all. Blows me away to know that there's so many generous people that want to see our journey continue. We thank each and every one of you for making this journey possible. We're a viewer-supported show. Can't do it without you. Thank you all for your kindness, generosity, and support. That's all we got for you. Again, I'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you'll be here with me. We're going to have a great show. We're going to have a great, fun show tomorrow night. Please do be here. The final thing I'll ask you is to send our channel address to some of your crazy friends. You're not the only crazy person. I'm sure that you have friends that are into these strange and esoteric subjects. Send our channel address. Tell them to watch some videos. Tell them to subscribe. It really would help. So that's really all I got for you. Until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you, especially you, Jeremy Corbell, and you, George Knapp, and you, Bob Lazar. I hope that you think hard about the lies that you have been selling people for years, and I hope that you find a better way to make money than selling people fake stories. Good night, and God bless you, and God bless all of us. Good night, friends.